RuneScape, a game synonymous with grind. With an average time to max an account taking well over 2,000 hours, it's no secret why. But what if you could take that grind and make it even worse? Well, buckle up, buckaroos, because I have the answer to your prayers. JDs and gentlemen, I present to you the Hardcore Ironman experience. So, what is a Hardcore Ironman account? Well, there's no using the Grand Exchange, no trading other players, no looting other players' drops. Everything you do in the game is self-sufficient. You have to either craft or loot all of your own gear, armor, weapons, and anything else you might need. You also only get one life, after which your score is tallied up, and you're downgraded to a standard Ironman account, ending your tracked playthrough, and it's by far my favorite way to play the game. So today, as someone who plays Old School Runescape semi-casually, I'm setting off with the goal to see just how much I can accomplish in my first 100 hours as a solo hardcore Ironman. I know in terms of RuneScape grind, that's practically nothing, but it does give me a nice initial goal to complete. The big goal for this playthrough is to see just how much I could progress on my own, with the focus of having fun with the game, and exploring quests and minigames, instead of trying to turbo sweatlord min-max AFK my way to endgame as quickly as possible. Make no mistake, this video is sporadic, at best. There were no plans or outlined routes that I went with for this. I didn't follow any Ironman guides or walkthroughs on how I should play the game. Instead, I operated purely off of vibes from start to finish. With that, this is how I spent my first 100 hours in Old School RuneScape as a hardcore Ironman account. Our journey begins much like anyone else's, on Tutorial Island. It was here where I became reacquainted with the nostalgia I'd been missing. There's just something about relearning how to catch and then cook some shrimp, or learning how to make bread. And don't even get me started on the sound of your brand new bronze pickaxe hitting the copper and tin. Just absolute chef's kiss. With Tutorial Island completed, I ran over to the Ironman pacing outside and made sure to set up my account to a hardcore Ironman before returning to the mage and having him teleport me to everyone's favorite starting town, Lumbridge. First things first, grab the starting gear from the Ironman tutor. He gave me some runes and an armor set to get me through the beginning. On my own for the first time, I got a little overwhelmed with where to start, so I settled on doing what I'm sure every one of us has already done before, and ran off to start fighting some goblins. It was truly an epic feat of RNG, a real battle for the ages. If we're being honest, if they don't erect a statue of me for that fight alone, what's even the point? With the goblin threat quelled, it was back to the castle to start on some simple quests, like the cook's assistant. This is one of, if not the easiest quests in Old School RuneScape in my opinion. It's a fetch quest at heart, but it helps you learn the layout of Lumbridge by sending you out to gather supplies needed to bake a cake. It was also when I realized that my RuneLite was still set up for a group Ironman account that I'd started with my buddies almost 2 years ago. But TGP, you just said in the intro you weren't using Quest Helper. That's true. It's also true that I came up with the parameter after completing the first 2 quests, so calm your tits. Back to the cook's assistant. You need to gather a bucket of milk, a pot of flour, and an egg. There's a few places to grab those items, but I started off with the egg. There's like 4 different chicken locations around Lumbridge, all of which have eggs that spawn inside of them, so you don't have to die for some chickens, but someone does. It also gave me an excuse to start hoarding some feathers and meat early on, so that I had some form of food at my disposal. With the egg obtained, I looked to my left and saw a wheat farm and silo, so I ran on over, stole a piece of wheat, tossed it in the hopper, forgot to pull the lever, climbed all the way back up, pulled said lever, then fell down 2 floors to collect my flour. After that was a bucket of milk. Now, you do start with a bucket from Tutorial Island, but that was all the way over in my bank. So if you're lazy like me, the next best option is to purchase a bucket from the general store. There was just one problem. When I put my bucket in the bank, I also threw my cash in there. So I found a homeless man behind the store and borrowed some GP off of him. Bucket in hand, I returned to the cows behind the wheat farm and got myself a bucket of milk. With all 3 items obtained, it was back to the castle kitchen to turn in everything and complete the quest, which brought me up to cooking level 4. With the cook's assistant completed, I got started on my second quest, X marks the spot. Now, it is worth noting that I already have a general idea of where the clues are hidden, such as the first one being next to the shops in front of the castle, and the second spot being behind the Lumbridge Castle itself. It was during this quest that I noticed the Quest Helper plugin literally shows you the exact tile to stand on, something that I felt kind of took away from the challenge, so I turned it off, but for some reason it kept popping back up when I checked the clues. I'm not sure if it was because I'd already started the quest before turning it off, or if I just needed to restart my session, but it continued popping up for the duration of X marks the spot. With the chest acquired, I delivered it to Veos over in Port Sarim, who gave me an XP lamp, 200 GP, and a clue scroll, along with the ability to sail myself to Land's End, a location that I'll end up frequenting a ton throughout this playthrough. Next up, it's time for what might be my favorite RuneScape quest ever created, Mistalin Mystery. Now, Josh Strife Hayes talks about how amazing the writing for this quest is in his RS3 video, and I want to echo the gist of what he says. I don't think you'll find an MMO with better quest storytelling than RuneScape. It's where the game excels, and it's such an underrated component of MMOs in general. Anyway, you can start this quest by talking to Abigail in the Lumbridge Swamps. She tells you that she was attacked by a psychopath on a nearby island. Taking a boat behind her brings you to the manor, where you get to watch Scream from Timu murder a random guy out in front who really plays it out for the effect. What starts after is a Jigsaw-esque puzzle-solving mission. Most of the doors in the building are locked, so you need to solve puzzles to unlock clues and keys which open up more of the manor. And as you progress further, you'll be taunted with cutscenes showing the masked murderer popping out of wardrobes and executing all of the inhabitants. The puzzles include things like finding a knife and slashing a painting to find a key, noticing that all the candles are out in a damp room, and having to light them with a tinderbox you find in a shelf, also that you can dry out the fuse and blow a hole in a wall. Or how about spelling out your fate on the piano keys? All of this came to a head when I faced off against the murderer in a room with wardrobes and mirrors. With this boss fight, you don't duel the attacker directly. Instead, you're told which wardrobe they'll pop out of, and then have to position the mirror to reflect the knife they yeet at you. After pulling this off 3 straight times, the murderer reveals themselves to be none other than Abigail, the woman who gave us the quest, and her boyfriend Huey. She kills Huey in a fit of rage, and just before she kills you, Mandy, a chick who was thought to be killed earlier in the quest, pops out with a fucking Bandos God Sword and saves the day, after revealing that she has dextrocardia, which is where your heart is on the right side of your body, I think, instead of the left, which explains how she survived the stabbing. Completing the mystery landed me 600 crafting XP and some uncut gems. Back at Lumbridge, I ran over to Duke Horatio and started Rune Mysteries, another really easy starter quest that unlocks the ability to mine rune essence, and one that I've knocked out at least a dozen times over the course of my life. I don't really feel the need to give like an in-depth walkthrough for these kind of quests, so to sum it up, you go to the Wizard's Tower and talk to the Archmage in the basement. He gives you a package, you take that and bring it all the way over to everyone's favorite city, Varrock, to find and deliver it to Aubrey. He takes the package and gives you some notes, which you bring back to the Wizard's Tower and hand over to the Reddit mod living in the basement, who then proceeds to teach you the basics of rune crafting. Immediately after finishing that up, I got started on the Restless Ghost. Now, all the pro, min-maxer, hardcore Ironmans like to do multiple quests at once, and you can find a ton of videos walking you through, like, which items you need to grab at which point for a specific quest that you're gonna need, and it's fascinating how all of that's broken down. But I don't really find that to be a lot of fun, so instead, I opted to tackle the quests one at a time. That way I could follow the story of the quest instead of just tracking a guide on the RuneScape wiki. So, the Restless Ghost. This is another very quick one to complete, and if you remember back to a few minutes ago, I grabbed the quest by talking to the priest in Lumbridge. He tells you to go to another priest living in a cabin in the swamps. He goes, "What the hell do you want?" And I say, "Hey, that other priest sent me because there's a fucking ghost just floating around," to which he replies, "What a guy." He gives me a Shamala amulet, which gives me the Sixth Sense, so I head back to Lumbridge to confront the ghost. After getting through the shock of someone being able to understand him, he tells me that a warlock stole his skull, and that's why he can't rest. The warlock lives over in the wizard tower that I was just at for rune mysteries, so I head back over there to investigate. Funny enough, as I was looking around for my next clue, I took a ladder to the basement and literally watched another player find the skull, run over, and give me a first-class presentation on what to do. So, I copied him, but instead of fighting the skeleton, I simply ran away. Returning the skull to the casket completes the quest, giving me over 1,000 prayer XP and boosting me up from level 1 to level 10. Next up was Sheep Shearer, another insanely easy quest that was one of the original quests included when the game first launched, and is meant to serve as an intro to crafting. All you need to do is talk to Fred the farmer, just north of Lumbridge Castle. He tells you to gather 20 balls of wool, and to obtain that wool, you need to do as the name of the quest suggests, and shear the sheep. I know, super intricate stuff. Anyway, once I had all 20 wool, I walked my happy ass up to the second floor of the Lumbridge Castle, and used the spinning wheel to craft 20 balls of wool. Handing these over to Fred the farmer completes the quest, giving you 150 crafting experience and another quest point, leaving me with one single XP needed to reach crafting level 8. It was around this time that a bunch of people began requesting I check out the Guardians of the Rift minigame, since I'd never played it before. Can you believe that? I've been playing RuneScape on and off for over 20 years, and the only minigame I've ever played was fucking Wintertodt. How embarrassing. See, I was always the slow grind kind of player, the one who just wanted to sit there and cut trees for hours, and then fletch them into hundreds of thousands of arrow shafts that I was inevitably going to forget about in my bank for a decade. Anyway, I didn't feel quite ready to take that on yet, since it was all the way over in the wilderness, and I have a combat level of 5. Granted, I've only logged about 2.5 hours so far, so I'm not quite sure how I stack up compared to the speedrunners, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on their tail. With no real clue as to what to do next, I settled on farming chickens for a bit. I know they're very weak, and there are probably some quests I could do to speed past all of this, but I figured chickens gave me several things that, at this point, I still kinda needed. Things like raw chicken that could be cooked for a decent food source, bones to level my prayer with, and feathers that would inevitably be used to make my own arrows. Once I hit level 5 attack, I dropped all my loot off at the bank and made my way over to Varrock, where I realized I was too broke to purchase a sword. Lovely. At this point, I wasn't too sure what to do next. I'd already burned through my to-do list for the day, but instead of logging off until I could come up with another plan, I just started mining. I want to say, mining is my favorite gathering skill in RuneScape. I don't know if it's just the sound or the nostalgia of it, but it's oddly satisfying and peaceful to do. I mean, as long as no one's running up and stealing all of your nodes. I started simple, grabbing a full inventory of copper and tin, after which I smelted them into bronze bars, and used said bars to smith a variety of items and weapons, all of which I sold to the general goods stores in small stacks to avoid any crazy diminishing returns. Looking at the profits, I still needed another 100 gold, but instead of mining, I tried my hand at fletching, using some of the nearby trees to gather logs, which I used to fletch arrow shafts, since I can't make bows until level 5. It became clear, almost instantly, that this wasn't a viable method, and so I fell back on the tried and true method of stealing from the local bar patrons until I made enough to finally purchase a steel longsword. Something that I almost immediately regretted, mainly because I found a guide for the Waterfall Quest, which gives you almost 14,000 strength and attack XP, making the steel sword practically useless. The reason I was so scared to do that quest is because you have to survive hits from Moss Guardians that can hit for like 15 damage, which might be a bit of a problem. But thanks to a short guide made by Kemi, I learned that you can aggro a zombie and completely avoid taking damage from the Moss Guardians. Now with that note in mind, I'm I'm not quite ready to go take on that quest yet, so I kept myself occupied by doing other things, like completing the Witch's Potion quest, and mining for more tin and copper, which I turned into bronze bars, and used to smelt more gear that I subsequently sold to the general stores in Barrock. My goal was to get enough money to pay for a voyage over to Catherby, only to find out I wasn't even close. So to make enough money, I fell back on pickpocketing some of these civilians around Lumbridge. And when that wasn't turning a fast enough profit, I tried simply walking over to the small fishing town. The hardest part was obviously White Wolf Mountain, which is home to level 25 White Wolves who can mob you and wipe out a third of your health before you even blink if you're not careful. Luckily for me, though, I was able to get through it with half of my health pool still standing. With that, I've officially made it to Catherby. But Catherby isn't even my main target. No, my main goal was to reach East Ardoyne, which I could steal cakes and bread from the baker's stalls with. I used to do this a ton when I was gearing up to grind my group Ironman account back in the day, where I'd use the cakes as my primary food for Wintertodt. But since the rework, there really isn't a need for it, so instead, I used this method to get me up to level 20, at which point I swapped over to the silk stall so I could farm that for cash. Speaking of cash, I can resell all those cakes and bread that I stole from the baker, netting me a nice profit to go along with the silk. The only downside with stealing the silk from here is having to deal with the knight that likes to patrol behind the stall. She can kill me pretty easily, so I tried to always keep my sprint up so I could book it out of there as soon as she caught aggro. Now there are a few methods to get around her, such as locking her in one of the nearby shops, but it's at this time that I feel the need to remind you, I have 10 health. I'm not surviving enough shots to kite her into another shop and successfully lock her in there. That's just not happening right now. Now, luckily for me, she doesn't come over here all that often, so I was able to get in a few good hauls. When I got tired of that, I sold my extra cakes and bread to the baker for a measly 630 GP, and then headed over to the silk vendor where I sold all 226 silk. This was a bit of a pain in the ass, since you can't sell the noted silk, and need to manually stock your inventory, run over, sell, and repeat until all of it's gone. It's also worth noting that you should always choose the 120 option, and then when he offers 50, you can counter 60, which is the highest sale price the vendor will take for the silk. In total, I managed to turn over 200 silk into about 13.5k, which isn't a shit ton, but it's a good start to buy some items that I'll need for other quests later on. With that though, it's finally time to start the Waterfall Quest. This is one of the more risky quests to do at my level, especially as a hardcore Ironman, but the payoff is worth it if you can navigate it correctly. Now, the recommended combat level for this quest is 25. Close enough. All I need for this quest is some rope, and 6 air, earth, and water runes. Naturally, I'll be bringing along some cakes as well for when I inevitably fuck this up. It's recommended to use a games necklace to teleport you, but again, casual Ironman. Don't have one, and don't have a clue as to how to get one yet. All I know is that a lot of people were complaining that I hadn't done this quest yet, and that I needed to do it. This is one of the quests that I did look up a guide for though, since it can be a bit convoluted and tricky, but the payoff is being able to skip several hours worth of grinding, and you'll see why in a few minutes. This lady up at the top of the hill gives the quest, which starts with you checking in on her son, Hudon, who's been searching for treasure. After talking with her, you can take the wooden raft out behind her house, which leaves you stuck on an island that you totally couldn't just take a running leap off of. From here, you can just swim off, which launches you down the waterfall. Now, initially, I thought this straight up killed me, and I just lost my hardcore Ironman, so it was a bit of a relief when I learned that this was just part of the quest. Just up the road from where you wash up is a house. On the second floor of that house, you can find a book to read. After that, you can head back downstairs and talk to Hadley. There's 3 dialogue options, and you have to go through all 3 of them. Order doesn't matter though, at least I don't think so just knock them out however you'd prefer. Now, we need to head all the way over to Tree Gnome Village, and considering I don't have any teleports, we're walking. Since this is my first time here, I had to go through the entire maze, which was an experience. I'm just messing with you, it's really simple. What I did was sit around and wait for my sprint to recharge before taking the ladder down. Once you're down the ladder, it's time to start hunting for a key, but don't worry because there's a billion guides that show you exactly where to look for said key. The only problem is having to tank hits from hobgoblins, which is what the cake is for. With the key in hand, I ran all the way back west to open the door, which let me talk to this little guy. Talking with him allows you to take a pebble, and with said pebble, we get to run all the way back. God damn it. Okay, welcome to the Tomb of Glariel? Glariel? Fuck it, who cares? This is where shit gets real. Inside are moss giants that hit for about 1.5 times my max health. I'll say it again. They hit for 1.5 times my maximum health. Oh, and I forgot to mention, no armor or weapons. So if you're wearing anything, you won't be able to enter the tomb. Good luck. But TGP, why the hell would you go in there if it's full of enemies who can one-shot you? I'll tell you why. It's single combat. Meaning, all I need to do is aggro a weaker enemy and let them chase me. I can heal through a weaker enemy's damage, and as long as they're aggroed to me, the moss giants can't hit me. It's a bit stressful, but allow me to demonstrate. The most important little tidbit here is to remember to stay patient. Let the skeletons and zombies come to you. That way, you don't risk accidentally aggroing the moss giant instead. Alright, first hard part's over. At least we get to wear armor again. To finish off the quest, I'm told to head back up to the start and repeat these same initial steps to get stranded on the small island again. This time though, instead of swimming and getting ragdolled down the waterfall, you can use the rope on the gray-colored rock in the south. Once there, I used the rope again on the dead tree, which dropped me down to the dungeon entrance. We have kind of a repeat of the moss giant here, but only on the second spot. The first key is in the double chest on my right, so I sprinted over and grabbed that right away. The second section features 2 fire giants that can one-shot me, so I grabbed a level 52 spider and repeated the process of letting them hit me while I walked through said fire giants until I reached the other side. Next up is a puzzle section which requires the runes. It's very simple. All you need to do is use an air rune on each pillar, then repeat the process with water, and then earth runes. Once that's completed, use the necklace on the statue, and then use the urn on the chalice, which completes the quest, and boosted me up to level 30 strength and attack. And just like that, one of the most difficult beginning sections is now complete. Now that's great, but it didn't do shit for my level 10 constitution or my level 1 defense. So, it took about 20 minutes or so to start fighting some barbarians to get that shit up a little bit. With my defense and constitution up to levels 12 and 13, I remembered that I hadn't done the Enter the Abyss quest yet, and figured, since I was up here, now would be a great time to knock that off my to-do list. It's one of these shorter mini-quests in the game, and really just requires you to talk to a mage a few times, and then teleport to the rune mines from 3 different locations. Those locations, in the simplest order, are Aubrey, the rune shop merchant in Varrock, the guy in the Wizard Tower dungeon, and then take a boat to Catherby and walk your happy ass back to Ardoyne to talk to this dude on the northeast. Got all that? Good. Now teleport back to Lumbridge and walk back to Varrock, talk to the mage, and boom, you're done. This also got me to level 9 rune crafting, so all that's left for a requirement to get to Temple of the Eye is to knock out that final level. Let's get to it. With level 10 rune crafting, I'm now finally able to start the Temple of the Eye quest, which will unlock access to the Guardians of the Rift minigame. At this point, I'd logged 9 hours over the course of a month, which is pretty hilarious when you think about it. Anyway, time to start Temple of the Eye. I started the quest by talking to Wizard Purston just inside the gate of Al-Kharid. She gives me an eye amulet, which I took to the mage of Zamorak, who told me to get him a cup of tea, because apparently he's British or something, I don't know. So I set out to find him, only to accidentally purchase a regular cup of tea instead of a strong cup of tea. After chucking that at Herbert, he teleports me to the Abyss, and inside the Abyss, I dumped the bucket of water on the Dark Mage because he smelled like horse shit, at which point he got really prideful about the month of June. In reality, it's a puzzle that you need to figure out by clicking all 6 energy in the correct order. After completing the puzzle, the Dark Mage gave me an incantation. Since I couldn't read it, I took the Fire Altar exit, which brought me back to Al-Kharid, right next to Purston, who then teleported me over to the Wizard Tower so I could speak with the Archmage hiding in the basement. The Archmage then sends me to the 2nd floor to talk to another wizard, who tells me to help his students with another puzzle, and oh my god, I'm gonna put my head in a microwave. After speaking with all of the apprentices, he gives them the correct answer, which is 11, and this geriatric fuck sets off fireworks inside his tiny little room. Guess he's gonna bid for Streamer of the Year. Speaking to the Archmage again triggers a cutscene where we all enter a portal into that place from Moana with the big crab. Once the cutscene ends, I walk around talking to everyone until another cutscene triggers. I skipped the dialogue because I don't care, I just want to get to the minigame, which I'm sure will piss some of you off, but that's where I'm at with this quest. Another cutscene triggers where Person gets the poltergeist treatment and a bunch of Reddit mods come waltzing out of a portal. This triggers what I was waiting for. A tutorial walkthrough of what Guardians of the Rift is. It's probably easier to just explain it in action, so I'm going to bypass this for just a second so that I can walk through the game mode as it's happening instead of in a dry run. After completing the quest, I took a moment to hit up the Dwarven Mines to purchase some better pickaxes before giving the Guardians of the Rift minigame a true run. Okay, Guardians of the Rift. Let's get into it. I only have one rune pouch, but it's recommended that you bring in a few of them, along with the best pickaxe you have available, and a chisel. For this, I hopped over to the dedicated world, which is 478 for me. Once in the minigame, you run over to the table and grab some uncharged cells from the front table before running over to the Guardian remains in the corner. There's a section in the northeast for the tryhards, but you need a pretty high agility level to unlock that path, and since I don't have it, it's not really worth talking about. Anyway, you mine the Guardian remains for fragments, which can be crafted into essence at a workbench just to the left of the entrance. This is where the rune pouches come in handy, since you can just load those up for extra essence space. With the RuneLight plugin for Guardians, it'll highlight which altar is active. Since I'm trying to avoid any major RuneLight plugins that alter the game to an OP extent, I'll be looking out for the glowing altars or whichever ones I see a shit ton of players running in and out of. Out of the 12 altars in the area, 2 will always be active, 1 elemental and 1 catalytic, some of which are locked behind quest and level requirements like the Blood Altar. From there, it's just basic rune crafting. Take the essence to the active altar and turn it into runes. Doing so on an active altar gives you the Guardian Stones and a charged up cell. The Guardian Stones are used to power the giant Guardian in the center of the altar slabs. That charged cell you have can be used to reinforce the barrier to the rift that person opened up. The cells can also be used to summon minions, but there can only be 10 minions active at a time, and since I can't create the highest quality cells from information we've already discussed, I won't be worrying about any of those. Oh yeah, there's different types of charge cells depending on which rune altar you use as well. Obviously, the higher leveled altar, the better the charge, but for me, I'll mainly be focusing on the weaker cells since I'm such a low level and haven't done any of the quest requirements. Doing all of this earns you energy, the same way you'd earn points in something like Wintertodt. Then, when the game ends, provided you've been able to earn over 300 energy, you're rewarded points for each energy type. Every 100 energy earns you 1 point in that type. So if you have, say, 500 elemental, but 100 catalytic, you'll earn 5 elemental points and 1 catalytic point. I'm probably butchering this to some extent, but then again, this video wasn't really meant to be a guide, so instead, I'd like to recommend a video that helped explain it all to me. I've linked OSRS Guide's The Only Way to Train Runecrafting video down in the description for you to check out if you're like me and are new to minigames. Actually, while I run Guardians of the Rift for a few hours, let's talk about that. I've been playing RuneScape on and off since about 2004, and during my 20-ish years of playing, I've never been one to quest or play minigames. In fact, up until about a year ago, almost all of my time in RuneScape was exclusively spent grinding in semi, if not full AFK methods. Why do the Waterfall Quest in an hour to get 30 levels when I can fight zombies in level 10 of the wilderness for 15 hours? Why bother questing at all when I can just stand in the GE, purchase all the supplies I need to power level through 70 levels of a skill, and then use someone's portable skiller for free for an entire weekend? It felt like I was playing a game where I cared more about playing said game as little as possible in the hopes of maximizing efficiency, rather than just playing a game because I enjoyed it. It's actually a massive reason why I left RS3 like 5 years ago. I found that almost all of my free time was spent in free-to-play worlds gold farming, so that when double XP weekends were announced, I could purchase a bond, run to the GE, and spend all that gold on materials and portable crafters, at which point I would sit still in one spot for tens of hours at a time and just farm out levels. It took me a long time to sit back and say, like, what the hell am I doing? And that's when I decided to try out Old School Runescape again. But this time, instead of embracing the grind, I made a concerted effort to embrace questing and the Wintertodt minigame before the rework. And if you can believe it, this all started with a group Ironman with some friends, which then turned into the primary reason I'm even making this video right now. So instead of trying to find more AFK methods or the best ways to not play the game, I'm trying to lean into the minigames and questing some more, because I feel like that's where RuneScape shines the most. And I gotta say, only being a handful of hours into a hardcore Ironman, I'm loving it. Especially the Guardians of the Rift minigame. Reminder, this is the second minigame I've ever played in Old School RuneScape, with the first being Wintertodt. So not only was this a fun and enjoyable minigame for me, it was new and exciting, and dare I say, the most addicting part of the playthrough for me up until this point. Now, that being said, after spending a few hours doing nothing but running Guardians of the Rift, and somehow not managing to earn a single award point, things needed to change. For starters, I need a better pickaxe. I think a lot of the issues stem from simply not being able to mine the fragments quickly enough. I currently have a mithril pickaxe at level 23, but ideally, I'd like to at least boost up to an adamant one at 31. It also gives me an excuse to mine up a ton of copper and tin to smelt into bars, so that I can move on to iron equipment. With 15 smithing, I officially moved on from tin and copper, choosing to instead bulk mine iron. That way, whenever I hit level 31, I can just start smelting it all down. It only took me about 30 minutes to go from mining level 25 up to 31, at which point I swapped over to my new pickaxe and headed back to Guardians of the Rift to give it another shot. This time, I only missed out by 6 points, which, while that did still suck, at least I was getting closer. On my second attempt, I did manage to finally earn some energy, with 2 being elemental and 1 being catalytic. Basically, as long as I get at least 2 of those bonus portals, I can get enough energy to earn rewards. Now, knowing that I have the ability to earn rewards if I pay attention, I got to work on a multi-hour grind, where I was able to stack up reward points. Sure, it's probably nothing compared to the more seasoned players, but to me, this was a massive win, and something I tried to really take advantage of early on. After writing that sentence, I took a short 6.5-month break from the game, like I tend to do. That's right, the last recording I have of this game, as of January 6th, 2026, when I resumed work on this video, was from June 19th, 2025 at 10:19 a.m. Hell, I was gone so long, they released an entire new skill to the game in my absence. And in that extended absence, I've returned with new goals. Number 1, instead of wandering around aimlessly, I'd like to focus on specific skills and explore each one individually. I know to the seasoned OSRS vets, this probably sounds incredibly stupid, since most skills share some form of overlap for things like gear, quests, and activities. But for me, it made sense to target each specific skill at a low level, and then expand into the broader activities as they reach that mid-level range. That being said, I'm still planning to target as many minigames as possible, since, like I previously said, I haven't really gotten to experience much of them in my 20-odd years of playing the game. With all of that taken into consideration, I decided to knock out one more level in rune crafting, since I'm currently at level 53, and 54 unlocks the ability to craft law runes. This would end up taking another 3 runs of Guardians of the Rift, bringing me up to 53 elemental energy and 42 catalytic energy. With all that energy, I ran over to the reward center and cashed in for everything I could. In total, I'd walk away with 1 large pouch, 1 giant pouch, 4 intricate pouches, Atlax's diary, 44 abyssal pearls, a shit ton of runes, and a water, mind, cosmic, and nature talisman. Each of the intricate pouches also held hundreds of additional runes, leaving me with this as the final haul. That's enough Guardians though, at least for now. It's time to hop into something else. Fishing. Specifically, the Fishing Trawler minigame. It's another minigame I've never played before, and one that's been on the to-do list for a while. In order to earn rewards from the minigame, I'll need a fishing level of at least 15, so that's step number 1. I know I could probably just get that from a quest, but I much prefer the old tried-and-true grind method. So, after ripping off the fishing tutor for another net, I sat next to him and caught some raw shrimp. Aside from having to deal with the local homeless population, it was actually pretty relaxing and a nice change of pace from the constant click spamming of Guardians. That being said, this is the slowest way to earn XP. Literally the lowest type of fish I can catch, but it's still better than nothing. After dumping an inventory of shrimp into my bank, which I'm sure the banker loved dealing with, I made my way over to Port Sarim, where I spent 1k on a fishing rod, fly fishing rod, harpoon, and lobster pot, with the remaining cash going towards 150 fishing bait and a feather pack. With all my gear locked safely in the bank, I went back to net fishing, this time over in Draenor, until finally hitting level 5, and swapping over to an actual rod to catch some sardines. Sardines give 20 XP per catch, doubling the shrimp rates, and keeping this much more in line with the expected early game grind. Including the short sprint to Port Sarim and purchasing all of the fishing gear needed, it would take around 40 minutes for me to reach fishing level 10, which unlocks the ability for me to catch herring along with sardines. Herring provide 30 XP, so triple the reward of shrimp, and 1.5 times the reward of sardines for the same action. They also serve as a nice stepping stone when it comes to cooking, considering both shrimp and sardines can be cooked at level 1, but herring requires level 5. It's not super important by any means, but it's good to know nonetheless. In total, I managed to catch 38 shrimp, 70 sardines, and 21 herring to reach fishing level 15, all of which I took back to Lumbridge and cooked, bringing my cooking skill up from level 6 to 19. With the level requirement met, I was free to finally start Fishing Trawler. Or so I thought. After watching a few guides, practically everyone talked about needing swamp paste. There's only one problem. Since I can't buy it from the GE and have to rely on shops, it's gonna cost me roughly 50 GP per individual paste, and I don't have that kind of money. I have like 8k in the bank right now. But thankfully, there's an easy way I can go about crafting it myself. It's just, incredibly time consuming. For starters, you need to run around the swamp, manually collecting individual pieces of swamp tar lying on the ground. Not horrible, aside from the fact that I have an agility level of 1, so my stamina sucks. Once you collect the swamp tar, you need a shit ton of pots. I'm sure you could buy a few of them from the general stores, but I found it easier to just hang out in the Lumbridge Castle kitchen and steal them from a chef. I'm just kidding, that's so fucking slow. It's so much faster to just spend 5 GP and buy 5 pots from the trader next door. After obtaining an entire inventory of pots, I went back to these swamps for an even 100 swamp tar. Mainly because I learned that you don't need to exclusively use said swamp paste to earn points. It's just one of the ways. Albeit the easiest method. But I'll get to that during the breakdown. Until then, it's collecting swamp tar. With the 100 swamp tar, it's time to collect flour. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but I guess there's a way to obtain an infinite amount of flour through the Murder Mysteries quest. But, I didn't know that because I don't know Life the Game. So, instead, I fell back on the OG method of gathering up a shit ton of wheat, grinding that into flour, and then collecting it in pots. From there, I combined the flour pots with the swamp tar to create raw swamp paste. With the 100 raw swamp paste, all that was left to do was cook over a fire, transforming it from raw swamp paste into regular swamp paste. Now you may be sitting there asking yourself, was any of this worth it? Absolutely fucking not. But it's done now, so it is what it is. The only way to learn that something isn't worth doing is by doing it yourself and realizing how fucking stupid it is. Okay, now it's time for fishing trawler. There's a ton of different ways to get there, but considering I lack the means to do just about all of them, the easiest route was to simply take a charter ship to Port Khazard for the low price of 1280 GP. Once I arrived, I swapped to World 370, which is the dedicated world for the fishing trawler minigame, before boarding the ship and beginning. So, what is the fishing trawler minigame? Well, allow me to break it down for you. This guy Murphy takes you and a shit ton of other players out on a fishing expedition. Your job as the player is to prevent the ship from sinking for 5 minutes. There's a ton of different ways to go about that. But first, click this button to disable the camera sway if you're like me and don't enjoy a little bit of motion sickness with your early 2000s video games. With that disabled, we can go through the mechanics. The game is centered around a point system, which you can earn through various activities on the ship. You need a minimum of 50 points to earn rewards, but filling the meter entirely for a max of 255 points earns you an additional 50% of your total haul. It doesn't matter if you contribute 50 points or 150 points, your reward is still the same if you don't max the bar. Most players just stop at the 50 points, since that's the minimum requirement, and then just AFK the rest of the time, which I totally get. I know the whole point of making this video was to get away from AFK fishing, but I still prefer this to the normal fishing grind. So I made the goal of playing the game mode for a few hours to see if I could earn a few pieces of the set of armor before I got too bored. So, how does one earn points? Great question. The easiest method is to sit below the deck and patch the holes in the bottom of the ship. Each patch costs 1 swamp paste and awards you with 5 points per patch. Up on the main deck, a kraken tentacle will attack from alternating sides. You can use your axe to chop at the tentacle for 10 points per successful hit, awarding you 5 woodcutting XP. The chance to hit a tentacle depends entirely on your woodcutting skill and the type of axe you're using. As someone currently wielding a bronze hatchet with a woodcutting level of 10, not good. Additionally, you can fix the broken rail caused by the kraken tentacle for another 10 points and 5 construction XP. And finally, there's a net at the front of the ship that gets torn up from time to time. You can repair it with a rope, which awards 7 points and 5 crafting XP. With 1 run completed, this was my haul. Not great, but better than nothing, I guess. To be honest, no one really cares about the fish from my understanding. Instead, it's all about obtaining the angler outfit, consisting of an angler hat, top, waders, and boots, which, after equipping those 4 pieces, provides an additional 2.5% fishing XP when wearing. Each piece has a 1 in 12 rarity drop rate. It's worth noting as well that the total rewards are divided between all the players present when the ship sets off, meaning the more people on board, the less of a haul you'll come back with, which makes sense from a realistic standpoint, but I can also see why no one really gives a shit about the hauls outside of the angler set. Quick note on the loot you grab from the trawler net in between rounds. that allegedly disappears when another run starts, meaning you only have 1 minute to run over and grab it all. It's not like Wintertodt, where you can just get a chest, or Guardians of the Rift, where you can redeem it all at the end. Compared to any of those game modes, this was by far the least enjoyable. For the AFKers, you're able to get the 50 required points in under 45 seconds in some instances, meaning you play the game for roughly 15% of the entire minigame, allowing you to sit around and twiddle your thumbs for the other 85% of the time. The lack of XP scaling based on your contribution, coupled with the low rewards, make this not only one of the least rewarding minigames in the game, but also one of the most boring, at least in my opinion. Thankfully, there's another fishing minigame that I can play at level 35, Tempoross. Just gotta knock out 20 fishing levels to get there first. Before that, I just spent like an hour crafting 100 swamp paste, so I'm gonna fucking use it. So, with my remaining swamp paste, I pumped 4 to 6 per trip, and then spent the remaining time fighting the Kraken on the top deck, knocking out several more successful endeavors, resulting in 0 pieces of the gears at being earned. Not sure what I was expecting, to be honest, but it was much more than this. So, once I finally ran out of swamp paste, I ported back to Lumbridge, ran over to Draenor, and got back to fishing for sardines and herring. This continued until I ran out of bait at level 19, at which point I decided to take a small break from fishing and pursue something else. Agility. I promise it's not as bad as everyone says. Okay, it is, but I feel like that's mainly due to most people trying to find the way to least play the game, and since agility has no real AFK method, at least one that I know of, you can see why it starts to piss people off. You basically have to balance the importance of not getting carpal tunnel in your 20s, or getting an agility cape. Personally, I think the choice is obvious. Normally, I feel like the go-to strat is farming out the first 10 levels or so in the Gnome Stronghold course, but considering the fact that I'm already in Draenor, I figured this would be a great time to try out the Draenor Rooftops course. To be honest, I didn't even know this existed until I was checking out the skill, so this was my first time even attempting it. Look at him, just asserting dominance over the entire town by T-posing. The goal was to knock out 20 levels here before moving on to another course, so I spent the rest of my day running laps across the rooftops of the pores and hoping I didn't fall through any of them. During this process, I managed to loot a Mark of Grace. Not entirely sure what that is yet, but I was told I could redeem it at the Rogue's Den, which is another minigame area I have on my notes to check out, so I'll just save all the marks for that time and redeem them en masse. Until then, more T-posing, more jumping off boxes, and more of this sound. It would take a little less than 40 minutes and 38 laps to reach agility level 20, unlocking the Al-Kharid rooftop course. During that time, I managed to scoop up 8 Marks of Grace. With the Al-Kharid agility course unlocked, I threw on some armor and ran over to try it out. This was also the first time I've done this course, so I was excited. With other characters, I'd do Edgeville Dungeon monkey bars until mid-40s, and then head on over to the Wilderness agility course, but I'm not willing to risk the wilderness on a Hardcore Ironman account just yet. Anyway, over in Al-Kharid, you can access the rooftop course by going to the northwest of the town and climbing up this spot by the Tanner. This one's a bit cooler than the Draenor course, and even comes with, whatever this is. The next milestone will come at level 30, when I unlock the Varrock course, so that's the target. I still have no fucking clue what's going on here. Is he hanging himself? Marks of Grace can also be obtained on this course, so I continued stacking those while trying to survive the horrors of the final season of Stranger Things. In total, it would take 41 laps around the Al-Kharid rooftop course to reach agility level 30, bringing my Marks of Grace total up to 18. This, in turn, unlocked the Varrock rooftop course, but before that, I teleported back to Lumbridge to check on my progress. Alright, about 24.5 hours in, a quarter of the way through. I'll take it. On to Varrock's obstacle course. Much like the previous two, this was my first exposure to this one as well. To start, you can access the course by climbing up the rough wall directly behind the general store. This is probably my favorite course of the past 3. I don't know if it was just because it was in the city I know the most, or if it's because it feels a bit more unique than Al-Kharid and Draenor, or if it's just a mixture of both. The course itself takes you through most of the city, starting with the decrepit ruins of old houses and shops, before taking you through the finished portion and dropping you next to the prison cages directly outside of the general store. There's a bit more uniqueness to this course as well, compared to the previous two. For instance, you have the double portions like that unfinished building where you have to balance along the wall and then hop to the next building all in one go, or leaping to a table on a balcony, then climbing up to the rooftop. It was also here where the grind really started to set in. While the Al-Kharid course took 41 laps to level up 10 times, this course is estimated to take 101 laps to complete, earning me just under 240 XP per completed lap. At least I wasn't alone though. Throughout my grind, I encountered a few other agility enthusiasts, all matching my appearance, which I thought was funny. Like a group of parkour clones, forced to lower the property value of an already collapsing town. Imagine getting off your 12-hour shift at the bank, walking home, and you look up to see a bunch of people all wearing the same clothing, just absolutely destroying the roofing tiles of the entire town. Thank God the inhabitants are static NPCs, otherwise there'd be an HOA installed within the week. In the end, it would take only 87 laps for me to reach agility level 40, setting the stage for me to knock out the final 10 levels over in the town of Canifis. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's the place right next to Varrock. Unfortunately, to get there, you have to go through this trapdoor and break through the gate, which I don't know how to do just yet. It turns out you need to complete the Priest in Peril questline, which I'll do later on. For now, I wanted to change my focus to reaching the first minigame I ever played in RuneScape, Wintertodt. To get there, I wanted to try and craft a games necklace instead of spending another 1000 GP to sail. Doing so requires mining level 40, so I can mine gold, so while I grind out the final few levels, I wanted to touch on why I wanted 50 agility in the first place. The main reason was that 50 agility, alongside 50 thievery, unlocks the Rogue's Den, which is where I can allegedly redeem the Marks of Grace that I've been collecting while training. On top of that, leveling agility increases your stamina capacity and regen rate, allowing you to run for longer and regen faster the higher your level. This applies incrementally every level with the following formulas. For reference, using these formulas from agility level 1 and a weight of 0 kilograms, the stamina drain per tick comes out at 59.8 stamina drain per tick, with a regen rate of 15.1 per tick. At my current agility level of 40, those numbers change to a stamina drain of 52 per tick and a regen rate of 19. If you're struggling to put that into gameplay because math hurts, allow me to make it a bit simpler for you. At agility level 0, with 0 weight, you can get about 1 minute and 26 seconds of solid jogging before you feel like you're about to pass out. It then takes about 7.5 minutes to fully recover back to 100 stamina. At my current level of agility 40, I can run for about 2 minutes at 0 weight and fully recover in a little over 5 minutes. It doesn't sound like much, but I promise it makes a huge difference when you can't teleport wherever you want just yet. Alright, back to gameplay. Mining iron got boring almost immediately, and to make matters worse, I realized it takes level 40 smithing to make gold bars. Thankfully, I had 2 gold bars in my bank, along with an uncut sapphire, which is exactly what I needed to make a games necklace. All that was left to find was a necklace mold, which I was able to purchase from a vendor in Al-Kharid for 5 GP. With the mold in hand, I made my way back to Lumbridge and smelted the gold bar into a necklace using the nearby furnace. There was just one problem. God damn it. Now, I only needed 3 levels, which was annoying, but what are you gonna do about it? So, instead of farming goblins, I took my happy ass over to the chicken coops and got to work decimating chickens with Wind Strike, the only combat spell I currently had available. Why did I choose chickens? Well, because not only can I use the raw chicken to help knock out a few more levels in cooking, but I can use their bones for prayer, and collect feathers to make fishing a bit more bearable when I inevitably swap to fly fishing. Honestly, the biggest headache with this was simply the fact that I had to keep manually clicking on the Windstrike cast every time, since I didn't have a staff to autocast with. Now officially magic level 7, I was free to enchant my gold necklace. After realizing I crafted the wrong necklace, of course. Turns out, the option for a gold sapphire necklace wasn't available to me, because the sapphire wasn't cut. Oh my god. Okay, I only need 179 XP for level 22. Guess we're shearing sheep. Is there a faster way to go about this? I don't know, probably, but this was the simplest way I could think to get it done. It only ended up taking 3 inventories of wool to finish the remainder of level 21, and finally, I can craft a gold sapphire necklace. Now to finish grinding the requirements, mainly 50 firemaking. I say that like even something as simple as chopping trees and lighting logs on fire doesn't come with its own subset of tasks to complete. For starters, I still only have a bronze axe. Thankfully, I can purchase a steel axe from the shop in Lumbridge, but for something like an adamant or rune hatchet, I'll need to either craft it myself, or purchase one from Perry's chop shop over in the woodcutting guild, which requires level 60 woodcutting to get into. Thankfully, I still had about 30 logs in my bank to get me up to level 10, so I started there, with the goal of catching up to my woodcutting skill, so that I could swap to oak trees as quickly as possible. You guys remember the campfire lines? Yeah, me too. With both skills reaching level 11, I figured the best way to go about things was to chop down regular trees until hitting level 15 woodcutting, then swapping over to firemaking until that hit level 15 as well. This only ended up taking a few minutes, and before long, I found myself chopping away at some oak trees also found in Lumbridge. I'm gonna be honest, the whole time I was doing this, I just kept thinking of the guy who did a 99 woodcutting without leaving Lumbridge. Happery, I think the channel name is. Go check that out, that's fucking insane. Anyway, the next milestone is 30, at which point I can start chopping willow logs. So that's the sole focus. With woodcutting being one of the more AFK skills for me to grind, I tried to keep myself occupied by doing nothing. I mean, I watched a Turkey Tom video, but that was about it.
I hate British people, dude.
Same. For firemaking, it was more lines of campfires because it was the quickest way I could think to pound out these levels. So, I did just that. Now that I have level 30 for both woodcutting and firemaking, I can move on to willow logs for the final 20 levels. Fuck. Alright, let's get to work. Using the willow logs over at Draenor, I ripped off 11 more levels, bringing me up to 41, all with a steel axe because the grind don't stop. I wanted on the record that during this grind, I managed to finish the Valheim video, so if you're wondering how I kept myself occupied during this little stint, there you go. So why 41 specifically? Well, because it unlocks access to a rune axe, which I'll be able to bring into Wintertodt. But how do you get a rune hatchet, TGP? Great question. The short answer, we farm tree spirits. How exactly do we do that? Another short answer, it's complicated. To unlock the area needed to farm tree spirits, I need to complete some quests first. Primarily, all of the Fairy Tale Part 1 questline, and part of Fairy Tale Part 2. The Fairy Tale Part 1, Growing Pains, is... well, it's something I've been dreading since I started the grind a little over 30 hours ago. Not only have I never completed the quest before, but it's got a good recommended combat level of 50, because there's a level 111 boss. That's cool, right? And before we even do that, I've got to complete a few other quests, such as Lost City, Nature Spirit, Priest in Peril, and the Restless Ghost. Of those, I've completed the Restless Ghost, leaving me 3 remaining quests to complete, before I get to start this one. I chose to start with Priest in Peril for a few reasons. For starters, it's a prereq for the Nature Spirit quest. Number 2, it seemed like the easiest one. And 3, it'll unlock the passage to Candazale. I know it'd have to get done eventually, but it's an extra win to stack early, so it made sense to me mentally. To get started, I spoke to the king in the Varrock Palace. He tells me he hasn't heard from Drezel, the priest, in a few days, and that I should go check on him. Why me, and not anyone in the King's Guard? Don't ask. This led me back to the monk temple where I spoke with the ghost of Christmas past. It tells me to go through the trap door from earlier to kill the big-ass dog guarding the gate down there, so I ran down to give it a shot. Now this thing is about 8 combat levels above me, but I do have a shit ton of food, so I was able to just kind of brute force it. After killing the dog, I informed the monks inside who tell me to go talk to the king. He's, less than thrilled about the outcome. Turns out, that dog was guarding the mausoleum, and now Misthalin is in danger. From there, I took a quick pit stop at the bank to grab a bucket before returning to the temple. Mistaking me for a young boy, the priests opened the door, allowing me to fight them. They're a bit more difficult than the dog, mainly because they deal magic damage, and I'm still rocking the Iron Man gear set. Instead of taking some time to grind up my range skill, I opted to load up my inventory with food and return to try and brute force the mage. This time, it worked, thanks to the help of an inventory of cake and herring. You've heard about anchovies on pizza, but have you heard about herring on cake? Anyway, killing one of the level 30 mages of Zamorak drops a gold key, which can be used on the door in the hallway by the trapdoor. Just ahead is a monument room. You can study each monument to see the item it's holding, with all but one holding gold items. After finding an iron key, I tried to grab it, only to be stopped by a, quote, holy power. But thankfully, I was able to use the gold key to swap it in place of the iron one. From there, I used my bucket on the nearby well, filling it with murky water, and searching it with no result. I also tried and failed to use the iron key on the gate in the next room. At a dead end, I returned to the temple and hunted around until I found this. I tried to talk Drezel into leaving, but he's spooked by the vampire in the coffin. Thankfully, he agreed to bless the water in my bucket, allowing me to pour the water all over the coffin, no doubt recreating the ending of The Wizard of Oz. With the vampire no doubt melting in the coffin, Drezel tells me to meet him back downstairs, so I did just that, finding the door unlocked and freely accessible. Unfortunately, the monks of Zamorak have been busy rerouting the water from Flint, Michigan into the salve, tainting it and allowing vampires to spill across. But don't worry, there's a way to stop it. We just need 50 rune essence. Over in Varrock, I spoke with Aubrey at his rune shop, who teleported me to the rune essence mine. This, in turn, allowed me to farm out the 50 rune essence required, at which point I made 2 runs to drop it off to Drezel. Upon giving him the 50 essence, the quest is completed, earning me 1 quest point, access to another location, 1400 prayer XP, and the Wolfbang Dagger. The prayer XP was enough to push me to level 15, and 1 buried bone away from 16. Alright, Nature Spirit. I'm not gonna lie, I would 100% looked up a guide for this quest, and thank God I did. Not only have I never completed this quest before, but had I not looked up a guide, I wouldn't have known that I need to bring a silver sickle, which I don't think I've ever even equipped on a character before. To craft a silver sickle, I need a silver bar, which I can buy from a vendor or make myself at level 20 smithing. But currently, I only have a smithing level of 15, but I do have over 200 iron, so I grabbed a few stacks of it, smelted them down into iron bars, losing a ton of iron in the process, but oh well. And with a handful of those bars, I got started crafting some basic iron gear, making sure to diversify the items to maximize profits when I turned around and sell it all. Upon hitting smithing level 20 and unlocking the ability to smelt a silver bar, I made my way over to the mines in Al Kharid and got started mining out some of these silver nodes. Or so I thought. Instead, I was met with a barrage of scorpion attacks, forcing me to dip out after grabbing a single piece of silver. Thankfully, that was all I needed to smelt a silver bar. So, after purchasing a sickle mold, I combined that with the silver bar to craft the silver sickle needed to start the quest. Okay, back to the Nature Spirit quest. Like I said a minute ago, I had to look up a guide for this one, which ended up being crucial in this entire playthrough. Thankfully, the quest is pretty short, but it's still full of mini steps to complete per section. To start the Nature Spirit quest, you have to go back through that trapdoor underneath the temple and talk to Drezel again. Once the dialogue wraps up, I pass through the barrier and into the Mortmire Swamp. Once inside, you sprint south until you find the Grotto Tree. It's worth mentioning at this part that the ghasts roaming the area can taint your food, which is always a fantastic time. Regardless, I made it to the grotto and jumped across. Falling in the river deals damage to you, which sucks for me since I only have 14 HP to work with. Trying to enter the grotto summons the ghost of Philemon, who we're supposed to be looking for. You need your Amulet of Ghost Speak here that you originally get from completing the Restless Ghost quest, but the TLDR is that he doesn't believe he's actually dead, resulting in you having to use a mirror on him to get the point across. After looting his journal from inside the grotto, Philemon says he wants to become a nature spirit. And here's where the quest gets annoying. After receiving a spell scroll from Philemon, you have to run all the way back to Drezel and ask him to bless you. Once he does that, you go back to the swamp and use the bloom spell on a rotting log to make mushrooms grow on it. I grabbed said mushroom and returned to Philemon to solve a puzzle. To solve said puzzle, you have to do the following. 1. Use the mushroom on the west stone. use the spell card on the gray stone, summon Philemon by trying to enter the grotto, stand on the orange stone, and then tell Philemon you've solved the puzzle. From there, go inside the grotto and talk to Philemon again, which completes his transformation into a nature spirit. It's here where he asks you to obtain a silver sickle, which I already had on me. He'll bless the sickle along with a druid pouch and tells you to kill 3 ghasts with the new blessed weapon of communism. To fight the ghasts, you first need to use that bloom ability 3 times to grab 3 mushrooms and put them inside the pouch. Friendly reminder that each time you do this, you'll burn prayer points, but even with 16 prayer, I still had 6 points remaining after grabbing everything. The ghasts deal melee damage, so this was one of those instances where the Ironman armor actually really helped me, compared to trying to fight Zamorak mages. With the 3 ghasts slain, I returned to the grotto and spoke to Philemon for a final time. This completes the quest, rewarding me with 2 quest points, 3000 crafting XP, 2k constitution, and 2k defense XP, bringing me up to crafting level 26, 19 constitution, and 20 defense, bringing my total combat level to 31. The final prereq for Growing Pains is Lost City. This quest requires 31 crafting and 36 woodcutting. While I do have the woodcutting down, I'm still 5 crafting levels short. Now there are a few ways I could go about getting this up, but one that I felt like would come in handy was to turn flax into bowstring. That way, when I inevitably get on with my fletching grind, I'll have a few hundred strings to work with for fletching bows. A quick Google search told me that I could gather flax over in Land's End, which I can travel to by talking to Veos. Remember him? He'll bring you to this shithole for free. The flax can be found next to the fishing spot just west of the town. This is one of the more popular locations to bulk gather flax, due to Land's End having a bank chest that you can click on from the flax plot, allowing you to no-life it for an hour or 2 without having to constantly run all the way to town or use teleports. If the math is correct from the skill calculator, I'll need about 400 flax to reach level 31, so that's what I focused on for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Once I'd collected 420 flax, I ported back to Lumbridge and threw it on the spinning wheel to knock out the 5 levels needed. In total, it would take about 45 minutes to both collect all of the flax and then turn that flax into bowstrings. The final grind that needs to be completed is my magic skill. This is due to the fact that the Lost City quest requires you to kill an enemy with minimal gear. The main strategies for doing this are to either bring an unstrung bow, or bring runes to cast spells with. And since I need to work on my magic skill anyway to start unlocking teleports, this just gave me another excuse to do so. To get started on this, I first went back to Varrock and purchased a Staff of Fire for 1500 GP. This not only allows me to auto-cast spells going forward, but also provides me with an unlimited amount of fire runes for me to burn through. From there, I hit up the Dark Wizards just to the south and got started with my strongest damaging ability, a level 5 Water Strike. My goal for this was to at least unlock Fire Strike at magic level 13. The only real important bit for this is to stay below combat level 40, but given that I'm only 31 right now, I've got some room to work with. Well, that was almost really bad. Guess I should start smaller. This is more my alley. The Weenie Hut Juniors of Old School Runescape. These are my people. Not gonna lie, this is all I used to do when I was little. Me and a few buddies would load up on like steel and mithril arrows, and just do this to level our skills, and we thought we were like the coolest fucking people. It was only after hitting level 13 and unlocking the Fire Strike that I realized, hey dumbass, you have 420 bowstrings sitting in your bank. Why are you not just going with the bow strat? And thus, the mini fletching grind began. Using some regular logs, I crafted a ton of arrow shafts and headless arrows. Once I hit level 5, I changed focus to crafting short bows and adding strings to them. Only to once again go back to magic. Can you tell how stressed and indecisive I was gearing up for this quest? You'll understand why in a second, but for now, just know that your boy was struggling. After spending another 10 minutes or so bullying the lesser demon, I did a little research and found out that everything I've been doing is essentially pointless. At least according to Google. Let me explain. The entire goal of doing all of these quests and skill grinds was to unlock an area to fight tree spirits. Why? Well, because tree spirits have a 1 in 32 chance to drop rune hatchets. I was planning to use said rune hatchet over in Wintertodt, thinking it would be better than the steel hatchet I currently hold. Well, according to Google and the 2007 Scape subreddit, anything from steel to dragon is 3 ticks at Wintertodt, making them, essentially, exactly the same. This is incredibly important as it pertains to me specifically, because here's what I was about to put myself through in order to get to a point where I could do battle with RNG Jesus for a fucking hatchet. 1, I was about to fight a level 101 tree spirit without any armor. 2, next quest, I was going to have to fight a level 111 Tanglefoot with limited weaponry. 3, and finally, after reaching the tree spirits, they scale based on your level. In my range of 21 to 40, the tree spirits would have spawned in at level 49, hence why I was originally concerned with keeping my combat level before 40. All of this would need to be completed for a 1 in 32 chance at a rune hatchet that'll give me the same advantage of wielding a steel one. Now some of you might hear this and go, oh, so you just wasted hours for nothing. And while the old me would have agreed with you, having just gone through the whole quest grind, I can honestly say I think it was still worth doing. Because of those previous quests, I can finish getting agility to level 50 in relative safety, at least compared to the wilderness. I gained thousands of XP and tens of levels and skills, and above all else, I really enjoyed doing the quests, even if they were some of the shorter, more simpler ones out there. All things considered, I don't think I'm skilled enough as a player to survive 2 separate level 100 plus boss fights for quests that I've never touched before. So, with that newfound information, it was back to Willow Logs. After hitting level 25 magic and unlocking the Varrock teleport, of course. While racking up over 460 Willow Logs, I took some time to read up on forestry, something that I've never experienced, let alone knew existed up until I started working on this video. Turns out, you have to use some of your obtained logs during the event, which goes against the Firemaking grind, but it's something that I definitely want to try out, maybe after Wintertodt. Until then, we farm Willow Logs. I feel like I should talk about why I'm doing Willow Logs all the way and not Teak or anything else. The simple answer? I don't know how to complete the requirements to unlock Teak Logs, with most options and locations requiring quests to be completed, and I'd rather just do this because it's familiar to me. Now, that being said, it's going to take over 900 Willow Logs to knock out the final 20 levels of Firemaking. Yay. I know I'm doing it to myself, but it doesn't make the spam any better. Anyway, with a little over 900 Willow Logs in my bank, I got to work creating massive lines of campfires to assert my dominance over the Black Knight in the area. This continued for a while. Honestly, I lost track of time on this one. I started on Firemaking at like 5 p.m. on a Friday, and it ended up spilling a bit into the weekend whenever I could find like 30 minutes or so just to run a few inventories while on my phone. What I can say is that upon reaching Firemaking level 50 and unlocking Wintertodt, I did a time check, revealing that I am 40 hours in. Here's what my skills are looking like 40% of the way through the challenge run. Before heading to Wintertodt though, I need to check off one final item. I need 4 pieces of warm clothing so I don't just insta-die from exposure. Thankfully, I've done Wintertodt enough to know where some of the easy Clue Hunter outfit pieces are, so I made that my top priority. Since I have the Staff of Fire, which also acts as a piece of warm clothing, I only need 3 of the Clue Hunter pieces for maximum effect. First up, gloves and boots. These can be found over near Ardoyne, which I sailed to from Port Sarim after paying $1,200 GP fees to sail to Port Khazard. All you need to do is dig right next to this tree, and just like that, you already have 2 of the 3 pieces needed for Wintertodt, meaning I only need 1 more. I probably could have done this one first, but to round out my requirements, I went back south and dug in this exact spot right here to grab the Clue Hunter cloak. It's right between the 2 trees directly on top of a patch of flowers. Obviously, this isn't the entire set, but I figured it made the most sense to go after the 3 pieces all within walking distance of each other, just for simplicity. Well, now that I have 3 pieces of the Clue Hunter set, along with a fire staff, I have the maximum amount of warm clothing I can bring into Wintertodt, so I threw on the Games necklace and teleported over. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, Wintertodt was not only the only minigame I've played before making this video, but it's also one of my favorite things to do in RuneScape. Well, at least before the rework. Back in the day, you used to have to take actual HP damage from the cold, which scaled based on your health, meaning it was beneficial to go here at an insanely low level and just bring a ton of cakes and food. But since the rework, that method is essentially defunct. Not only is Wintertodt the most enjoyable way to reach 99 firemaking, but you can also put in some serious work for construction, fletching, and woodcutting. But that's not why I'm here. So allow me to walk through Wintertodt, and why it's going to be an integral part of the next 60 hours of playtime. To participate in the minigame, you really just need an axe and maybe a knife. That's what I've always gone with in the past, but you can also bring a hammer for construction XP, and a tinderbox to reignite any flames that go out. At its core, the game is all about chopping roots, throwing them into one of the 4 braziers, and doing that repeatedly to defeat the storm. Those logs can be fleshed into kindling and tossed in as well, with other activities like healing the pyromancers, repairing the braziers when they break down, and relighting the flames, all providing points towards your round score. Like I mentioned a second ago, you used to take HP damage, but that has since been replaced with a warmth bar. Every once in a while, you'll take damage from the storm that'll deplete your warmth bar, hence the need for warm clothing. If the bar reaches 0, you die. And since Wintertodt is considered a boss and not a minigame, little fun fact there, dying is unsafe. Meaning, if I die in Wintertodt, I'll lose my Hardcore Ironman status, ending the challenge. Now that being said, it's pretty fucking hard to die here if you just play the game as it's intended. To prevent your death, you can either eat foods like cakes that heal your warmth bar by 35 points each bite, or, if you've completed the Druidic Ritual quest, you can craft rejuvenation potions inside the minigame for free. All you need to do for that is to go to the entrance, pick some herbs, and then combine them with the crates full of unfinished potions. Easy. I want to touch on points though, since that's the big reason I'm here. To earn rewards from Wintertodt, you need to earn 500 points per round, with an additional rewards being given every 500 points. So if you earn 500 points, you're guaranteed a minimum of 2 reward drops, but at 1,000 points, you're guaranteed 3. This also scales with your points, so based on how close you are to the next 500 point mark you'll get more rewards. For example, if you have 800 points, you'll get those minimum 2 rewards, plus a 60% chance at a 3rd. It's important to note that the type of reward you get scales with your player levels in skills like herblore, mining, fishing, crafting, farming, and woodcutting. So the higher those skill levels are, the better rewards you get. But at the same time, it's great for bulk gathering resources to knock out the early levels with, and then coming back for a few more runs later on in your playthrough. When it comes to reward points, you can earn them in a variety of ways like I mentioned above, but the easiest is to simply chop bruma roots and then throw those logs into the brazier. Adding bruma roots to a brazier gives you 10 points, meaning you'd need to dump a little less than 2 full inventories of roots to receive a reward. Turning those roots into kindling with a knife and then adding that kindling provides 25 points per kindling added. Additionally, repairing and lighting a brazier both rewards you with 25 points, and healing a pyromancer gives you 75. My personal favorite method is to chop a stack of roots, convert them into kindling, and then just spam regular roots for the remainder. This still gets you a shit ton of firemaking XP, while also guaranteeing you rewards each round. Finally, the main Wintertodt world for me was 402. But since the rework, a ton of players have been running it solo, preventing the pyromancers from winning and keeping the storm at like 10% health for hours, stacking up hundreds of rewards, which previously just wasn't possible. Seriously, someone did like a 6-hour run one time and ended up with over 200 rewards from a single run. Shit's wild, but I'm not built like that, so instead, I played it safe. My focus was on earning 3 rewards per run on the main world, which is really about all you have time for, unless you're min-maxing it to hell with healing the pyromancers and repairing the braziers and all that. But if you're going with the simple method of chopping, kindling, and burning, you can get close to 1,000 points every time. Utilizing this method, my plan was to let it ride for about 10 hours and see what I could walk away with in terms of rewards. The hope is that 10 hours of Wintertodt will supply me with more than enough cash to get me through another 50 hours of grinding, while also providing me with enough resources to grind with. On the low end, I should be earning anything from teak to mahogany logs, some sapphires, some emeralds, iron, silver, coal, and gold for mining, a ton of low-tier herbs to clean and hopefully stockpile for later use, some basic seeds to help get me started on farming, a ton of fish to help with cooking, and ideally, an abundance of GP. Over the course of 10 hours, I completed 110 rounds of Wintertodt, earning 281 rewards. My firemaking shot up 28 levels to 78, my woodcutting is now 53, and my fletching is up to 45. Time to go pull 281 rewards out of the chest. Here's the total haul. 3 pairs of warm gloves, 1 pyromancer garb, 2 bruma torches, 128 burnt pages, 183 KGP, 108 rune essence, 43 saltpeter, 53 dynamite, 8 raw tuna, 166 raw anchovies, 104 raw trout, 18 raw salmon, 8 raw lobster, 34 limestone, 31 uncut rubies, 20 uncut sapphire, 23 uncut emeralds, 24 uncut diamonds, 32 silver, 12 mithril, 36 gold, 88 maple logs, 14 magic logs, 102 mahogany logs, 46 yew logs, oh my god, it just keeps going, 137 teak logs, 4 grimy warm, I don't fucking know, 33 grimy terramine, 38 grimy marintil, 15 grimy irit leaf, 13 grimy haralander, 2 banana tree seeds, 15 terramine seeds, 17 haralander seeds, 5 toad flax seeds, 23 coal, 3 acorns, 7 mahogany seeds, 2 magic seeds, 2 maple seeds, 3 teak seeds, and 8 willow seeds. Oh my god. Total estimated value? 1.95 mil. Not to mention the other materials that I already had stacks of, like iron and oak logs. The big takeaway from this haul was purely the 183k in GP, because with that money, I can finally get started on things like construction. First things first, I need a home. I know, but it's true. For the last 50 hours, I've been homeless. No better than a Skid Row resident. Actually, arguably worse than a Skid Row resident. At least they have tents. Anyway, to purchase a home, you need to talk to a real estate agent for 1000 GP. I found one in Falador. After earning a 5% cut for sending a few emails, he hands over access to a portal in Rimington, officially welcoming me to my new home. For me to build anything here, I need to be in build mode, which can be accessed through the portal directly. This provides outlines of where you can build shit like walls, doors, chairs, more chairs, and a few more chairs. To build pretty much anything and everything, you need planks and nails. Obviously, the better tier plank, the more XP you'll earn and all that, but for now, we really just need regular planks and regular nails. Houses are some of the most OP things in the game, especially for an Ironman and late game. Mainly because you can add little expansions on for things like your own farming garden, a kitchen, a chapel to replenish prayer points and to sacrifice bones into, portal rooms to teleport to hotspots for bosses or minigames, and really just a ton of cool shit in general. But before I do any of that, I need planks and nails. On a normal account, you can just run over to the GE and buy all of that, and it's super easy. But for Ironman accounts, you gotta pay a sawmill to cut your logs into planks for you, which fucking sucks. This, in turn, makes it one of, if not the most expensive skill in the game for Ironman accounts to max out. Thankfully, that isn't really the goal for me, at least right now. Instead, I just want to build something I can be a little proud of, with room for improvement and feedback based on you watching this video. Make no mistake, I am by no means an expert on any of this stuff. I have very basic knowledge obtained by spamming the RuneScape wiki and fishing for information from my other RuneScape YouTubers and streamer friends. With that, it's back to basics for a second. While I do have hundreds of oak, mahogany, teak, and willow logs, I'm lacking in basic level 1 logs, which I need to grind through first. Which is really just a roundabout way of me saying, it's back to woodcutting for a bit. With 50 logs ready to go, I teleported to Varrock and made my way northeast towards the sawmill. For normal planks, it costs 100 GP to saw a regular log into a plank. This is amplified to an insane degree as you swap to different types, which we'll get to in a little bit. But for now, just know that for 50 planks, it costs 5,000 GP. I'll mention the pricing as I swap to different planks while I progress. With those 50 planks, along with a few hundred bronze nails, I get to work building and disassembling some chairs inside my house. The big holdup here is the fact that you can accidentally bend some of the nails, temporarily failing the task. It's not a huge deal, but that's the fail portion where you'll just end up burning through dozens, if not hundreds of nails while trying to be Teemu Ron Swanson. This inevitably becomes a giant time sink as well, because the closest bank to the Remington portal is over in Falador. So every time you run out of material, you gotta sprint all the way back, grab your items, and then sprint back down to Remington. It's a good time, I promise. Now, sure, there is a guy hanging around at the portal that'll allow you to trade in noted items for 5 GP per item, but that's really just another expense tacked onto the skill. Regardless, I was able to turn 50 planks and 150 bronze nails into 11 construction levels, enough to swap over to oak planks, which means back to the sawmill. Remember how one regular plank costs 100 GP to make? Well, oak planks cost 250 GP to make, making them 2.5 times more expensive. To saw through all 208 oak logs into planks, it cost me 52k GP, a little over 25% of my total gold. This left me at 124k, something that would only decrease further after returning to the house, where I spent another several thousand GP on a kitchen and dining room set. All that work, all that money, to still need like 8 more levels to do anything with oak planks. Back to woodcutting. Finally, after hitting Construction 19 and unlocking the ability to build oak chairs, I can leave regular planks behind. For now. The first tiers of oak chairs cost 2 oak planks to make and give more XP than 4 regular plank tables, allowing me to absolutely snowball XP, especially when I moved into oak tables at 240 XP per completed build. During this process, I hit a total level of 600, which was pretty cool, but we're only a little over 50 hours in. So at this point, I set a goal to hit a total account level of 800 before the end of the current challenge, knowing this will only become more difficult as time progresses and my skills level higher. Back to construction though. After spamming tables and chairs for a while, I added a workshop, built out a few more tables, and a tool shelf. For a lot of the stuff in the kitchen, I need steel bars and soft clay. Now, for steel bars, I'll need 10 more levels in smithing, and then a shit ton of coal. So, first things first, I need smithing level 30. The fastest way to do that is to smelt all my iron into bars, then smack those bars with a hammer to craft iron gear, which I can sell for a menial profit. Okay, this is gonna take a while. Alright, I did some digging, and apparently there's a few mini-games for mining and smithing. The closest I've ever come to anything similar to that is the Motherlode Mine, and while I was planning to go there, I just watched a few videos on the Blast Furnace route, and it seems like that might be an option as long as I'm willing to part with most of my gold. Outside of that, I can do the Giant's Foundry minigame, but that requires a ton of bars that I don't have. Now, I could simply quest my way out of the early levels, but to me, it just made more sense to grind out more ores. I'm gonna need a metric shit ton of them anyway, so why not stockpile them now and save them for later when I can actually get some use out of them. After talking with a buddy, he told me that I should be smithing bronze plate bodies until I hit late 20s for smithing, so my focus shifted dramatically to copper and tin. Then smelting those to bronze bars, and beating the shit out of those until they looked like this. To be honest though, this doesn't feel faster. I almost feel like it would have been better to just mine iron for an hour, then smelt all those down into iron bars, and slowly work my way up from there. So, after spending an hour working on bronze plate bodies, only to earn 2 smithing levels, I did just that. Well, that's not entirely true. I did switch to silver for about 20 minutes, and grabbed a few inventories of clay, which I then combined with some buckets of water to make soft clay. But after accumulating over 300 iron, I got to work smelting it into bars. I'll need to make an estimated 50 iron warhammers to reach level 30 and unlock steel bars, meaning I would need approximately 150 iron bars. I will say, the Varrock teleport has saved me so much time that would have otherwise been spent running around. Anyway, it's time to get to work. With level 30 smithing, I now have the ability to smelt steel bars for 2 coal and 1 iron ore. So, it was over to Edgeville to craft as many bars as I could with the limited resources I had remaining. In total, I was able to craft 9 steel bars, which I then took back to my house, along with some soft clay, to finish up as much of the remaining pieces as I could. By the time this little construction, mining, smithing escapade wrapped up, I was pushing about 56 hours of playtime, with progress starting to slow down. I still have some more mini-games to explore, some activities I want to try out, and above all else, I still have to get into combat. I mean, we're halfway through the challenge run, and I haven't really done anything with combat aside from complete a few quests and violate some Geneva suggestions on a prisoner of war in the Wizard Tower. For starters, I want to knock out the final 10 levels in agility to hit 50 and complete that arc. Not only will that help me with energy consumption and regen, but when I pair that with 50 thieving, it'll unlock access to the Rogue's Den, which is one of the aforementioned activities I really want to try. That's at the top of things to do for me, with Tempoross being a close second. That only requires like level 35 fishing from what I remember, so that should be pretty easy to check off. Hell, if I grind for that and then cook up all those fish along with the fish I earned from Wintertodt, I should be able to really chunk away at that skill as well. Anyway, back to agility. Keeping up with the previous grind, I'm continuing with rooftop courses. This time, over in Candazale now that it's unlocked. It should go without saying, but just like the previous rooftop courses, this one is also entirely new to me. Hell, Candazale in general was new to me. The town sits right around the swamplands from the Nature Druid quest I did earlier, but it's entirely safe from outside threats. As long as you don't attack the locals, I mean. The agility course here can be started by climbing the tree next to the bank. Most of the course is very simple. It's a lot of just running to the edge of a building, then jumping to the next one, and repeating. But there is a unique jump here, where you get to pole vault between 2 buildings that I thought was pretty cool. It's not as enjoyable as the Varrock one for me, where you're scaling walls, parkouring onto balconies and all that, but I do appreciate the addition of unique jumps and moves with each course. Now that being said, I don't think any of these compare to the Gnome Stronghold course. I truly think that's gotta be one of the most enjoyable courses in the game. At the very least, it's the top compared to all the courses I've experienced so far. Doing some quick math, I'm earning about 240 XP per completed lap of the Candazale agility course. In order to go from level 40 to 50, I'll need about 63,000 XP, meaning I'll need to complete over 250 laps of this course. Okay then. Time to throw on a World War I documentary and fade off into the void. Quick fun fact I learned about this rooftop course specifically. It's actually an optimal strategy to farm out Marks of Grace here, at least between levels 40 and 89, since it has a higher than normal spawn rate of 2/3 instead of 1/3. I don't really care about any of that, but I thought that was interesting. While the grind continued, I got to thinking, how long was this going to take to complete 250 laps? To obtain 63,000 XP at this course? The answer? Well, it depends. Ignore the laps per hour in the top left, that's not important because I timed it myself. From the moment I click on the climb tree to start the obstacle course, until I obtain the 175 XP upon landing and completing a single lap, it took me about 45 seconds. Equipped with that info, I then divided an hour's worth of seconds, 3,600, by 45 and got 80. Meaning that at my peak focus, I can knock out around 80 laps an hour. 3 hours of non-stop grind would get me to 240 laps with that math, but you gotta factor in slip-ups of falling off the rooftops, short lapses in focus, or just small breaks in between spam clicking the green points and picking up marks of grace. This ultimately led to me settling on about 3.5 hours of active grinding to knock out the 10 required levels. All that was left to do now was put that theory to the test. To do this, I used the timer on the bottom right of the chat box. While it's not 100% accurate due to running all the way here from Varrock and pausing intermittently to write portions of this script, it'll be a decent indicator overall. If I did the math right, I should be able to hit level 50 just around the 4-hour mark for this session. In reality, it would take around 5 hours to finally reach level 50. But it's not all my fault. I was distracted several times by Lambo needing constant pets and wrestling, and I'm never gonna pass up on that, especially not for agility training. Not to mention the cold Frenchie who needs constant affection while she hogs up the entire space heater. Sure, it may have taken a bit longer than I would have liked it to be, but on the bright side, it landed me an additional 79 marks of grace, bringing my total up to 120 marks. At the time of reaching agility level 50, I am 2 days and 13 hours, or approximately 61 hours into the playthrough. Still plenty of time to make some sweeping progress. With that, I made my way over to Draenor and moved on to my next skill, fishing. The goal here is to reach level 35, allowing me to earn rewards at Tempoross. I'm fishing level 19 right now, but at level 20 I can swap to fly fishing rods to catch trout over near Lumbridge or in the Barbarian Village. Honestly though, the AFK aspect of fishing was a very welcomed change of pace from grinding agility for hours on end. Hitting level 30 only took a few minutes, and ultimately unlocked the ability for me to catch salmon, a pretty big step up from the herring and sardines I've been stockpiling. Salmon provides 70 XP per catch, compared to the 50 I've been getting with trout. When I totaled up my inventories, I ended up with an average of 1650 XP per run. All in all, it took a little over an hour to go from 19 to 35, unlocking Tempoross for me to try out. But before that, I have hundreds of fish that need to be cooked. I started with the lowest tier fish and slowly worked my way up, starting with raw shrimp and anchovies. I have about 20 shrimp and just under 200 anchovies to work with, and thankfully, I didn't burn too many of them, bringing me from cooking level 20 up to 26. From there, I cooked the rest of my chicken, boosting me to 27 before swapping back to sardines. These only give 10 more XP than anchovies, shrimp, and chicken, but it was still better than nothing. They brought me up to level 29. Add in another 35 herring at 50 XP per fish, helping to cap off another level, bringing me up to 30 cooking before the big haul started. With over 300 raw trout earning me 70 XP per fish, I got to work, burning about 8 per load, leaving me with an estimated 1400 XP per inventory on average. By level 36, I was only burning 2 or 3 fish per inventory, giving me an extra few hundred XP to add to the gains. By the time I finished with the trout, I was a single fish away from 40, which the 84 salmon helped me cap off. Salmon were the highest XP food I've made so far, providing 90 XP per successful cook. With that 90 XP, I was able to climb up to level 41 cooking. To end the cooking grind, I grabbed all my lobsters and tuna, using the remaining 16 fish to close the gap on level 42. Here's what I'm working with for food so far. With that, I think it's time for Tempoross. To get to Tempoross, you need to go through Al Kharid and run all the way to the southwest until you see this guy. He'll sail you over to the start of Tempoross, which starts very similarly to Fishing Trawler, requiring you to climb onto the boat before it sets sail. For the best lobbies, go to World 422 if you speak Imperial System. So, how do you play? Well, at its core, Tempoross is about shooting fish out of cannons into a big sea monster demon thing. Very Sea of Thieves meme style. To start, you can use your harpoon to fish some raw harpoon fish. That's your ammo. Every once in a while, a green spot will pop up indicating a double fish spot, providing a boosted chance to periodically catch 2 fish at a time. If you're not using rune light, you can tell the difference by the fish jumping out of the water. Once you have enough fish, you can load them directly into the cannons to deal damage to Tempoross' energy pool, or you can cook the fish, which provides more points than just shooting them raw. Once all of Tempoross's energy has been drained, you can run to this little pool on the dock and yeet a bunch of harpoons into it, directly damaging the boss and stacking even more points in the process. This happens twice per game on average, allowing you to get a few stacks caught and loaded before running over to kill the boss. It's worth noting, the boss has a few attacks that can slow you down or fuck up your progress if you're not careful. A rope and bucket are practically essential to this process, since you'll need to put out any fires that spike up on the floor, as well as being able to tether yourself to either the mast of the ship or the totem on the island. Getting hit by any attacks doesn't actually damage you, but it will stun you temporarily and force you to drop some of your inventory. Similar to pretty much every other minigame, you earn reward permits based on the points earned in-game. For Tempoross, you need to earn at least 2,000 points to be eligible for rewards, with additional reward chances increasing with every 700 points. The rewards are pretty sweet as well. Most of them consist of noted fish, which scale based on your level. So at level 35, you get chances at fish like herring, salmon, and tuna. But from 50 to 75, you'll be procking way better fish, like bass and swordfish. You can also get spirit flakes, which are used to craft spirit angler gear for a fishing XP boost, as well as providing a 50% chance at a double catch while fishing out in the world. There's also some rare drops you can grind for, like the Tome of Water, which has a 1 in 1600 drop rate, or a Dragon Harpoon at a 1 in 8000 drop rate. When it comes to earning points, I think I have it right. Simply catching a fish rewards you with 5 points. Cooking a fish earns you 10. Loading those cooked fish into the cannon earns you 65 points per fish, whereas raw fish only earn you about 20. Harpooning the spirit pool earns you 55 points per hit. Putting out fires caused by the storm also rewards you 40 points, as well as tethering yourself to survive a Tempoross attack earns you 10. So, what I found to be the best method for points was simply to catch a bunch of fish early, cook them up, load them into the cannons. I could typically get at least one full inventory of cooked fish into the cannons on my very first pass, earning me around 1800 points. From there, I'd go back to fishing until his energy was fully drained, at which point I'd run over and attack the spirit pool. By the time the first spirit pool event ended, I was typically at around 2700 points, meaning I'd already secured at least 3 drops with a full second wave to go. With the energy restored, I'd find a double fishing spot and farm that until it depleted, before cooking all those fish and loading up the cannons a second time. Obviously, each run ends with the second spirit pool attack, and by the time we'd killed Tempoross, I'd find myself at around 4500 points. Good enough for 5 reward permits per wave. I know most players prefer this as a solid early to mid-game method for grinding out those fishing levels, but honestly, I cared way more about the drops than the XP right now. I feel like I could say that for every minigame actually. To me, the XP will come in time, but the rewards that I'm able to stack feel like they'll matter way more to me throughout my Ironman journey than a few hundred extra XP would. So, instead of focusing on increasing my XP per hour, I tried to continue setting personal high scores each round. I found that helped keep me much more engaged than just staring at the XP bar. With that strategy in mind, I ended up running Tempoross for a couple hours straight, completing 17 runs for a total of 62 permits. Time to see if it was worth it. Okay, 106 tuna, 230 pike, 227 salmon, 921 spirit flakes, 2,447 feathers, 3 caskets, 31 lobster, 842 steel nails, 2,500 fish bait, 22 seaweed, 22 bass, and 28 planks. I'd say that's worth it for like 2-3 hours of grinding. Not to mention the 12 levels in fishing, bringing me up to 47 and cooking 43. The 3 caskets also netted me 18 emeralds, 14 red topaz, and 12 sapphire bracelets, all of which will probably go towards my crafting skill. So, what's next? Well, I'd really like to get thieving to 50 to unlock Rogue's Den, and there's no denying that stealing from a few stalls and farmers wouldn't be good for stockpiling items. But we're about 2/3 of the way through the challenge, and I haven't even touched Hunter, or Farming, or Sailing, or Herblore, let alone Combat and Slayer. After laying it all out, I decided to go change focus to Hunter for a few reasons. One, like I just said, it's a skill I haven't touched yet, making it a priority. 2, outside of placing a few magic traps on double XP weekend in RS3, I've never actually utilized the skill in any manner. Ever. It's entirely foreign to me in the world of RuneScape. I've never completed a single quest for it, or placed a trap out in the wild. While I won't be looking up any guides for this skill, or the best 1 to 99 method, I did look up some quests that I can start with, which will give me a good starting base that I can branch out from once I complete them. Practically everyone I talked to for Hunter told me that I should go to the Varrock Museum quiz to get started, so I did just that. The quiz itself is pretty simple, even if you're newer to RuneScape. I mean, it also helps that RuneLight by default will just highlight the correct answers, but, you know. Completing the quiz gave me 1000 XP in both Hunter and Slayer, boosting me to level 9 in each. Next up, I was recommended the quest Bon Voyage, which unlocks a new location for me that I can use to train Hunter at. But to do that, I'll need to obtain 100 kudos, and I don't know how to do any of that. So all this did was immediately turn me off from the Hunter skill. That being said, I will gladly take advice or recommendations for this skill, quest to complete, or how to go about this. So if you have any tips, please let me know. Having reached a dead end with the Hunter skill, I decided to shift focus over to Herblore. Now, I do have some experience with the skill, but most of that, once again, was due to me sitting in the GE spam crafting shit on RS3 during double XP weekends. I do know the skill is practically a requirement for bossing late game, since you can craft some insanely good potions, but up front, I really only see myself using attack and strength potions early, if at all. Obviously, those are still better than not having potions, so I wanted to dedicate some time to that before swapping over to combat. To start, I'll need to complete the quest Druidic Rituals. Thankfully, I've done the quest a few times over the years, and knew where to start it, so off to Taverley I ran. Speaking with, not even gonna attempt that. Speaking with this dude starts the quest. He tells me that the Stonehenge-looking place just outside of Varrock used to be used for the Druids of Guthix, but now a bunch of dark wizards hang out there, having cursed the rocks. Because of this, one of his buddies is working on a purification ritual over in his Herblore shop, and I'm immediately realizing that this is just a giant ploy to get me to buy things from said shop. Sanfu tells me to go get some meat and dip it in a cauldron located in the woods to the south. I now need to obtain a raw bear, rat, beef, and chicken meat. Almost all of that can be grabbed over in Lumbridge, aside from the bear meat. There's allegedly a spawn over in Land's End though, so I ported back to Lumbridge and got to work collecting everything else. For rat meat, I killed a level 3 rat just behind the Lumbridge castle. For chickens, I hit up the farm in the north that I trained magic at for a bit. And for cows, I just targeted the pen directly next to the chickens. In total, this took about 3 minutes. I probably spent more time running to each of the locations than I did actually collecting the meat. When it came to the bear, though, I was able to talk to Veos in Port Sarim, who brought me to Land's End for free. Fun fact that I forgot to mention earlier, you can find Bob Ross here. Or rather, Rob Boss. He's painting over by the shore. One of my favorite people to ever exist, so the fact that he's also memorialized in one of my favorite games is just amazing. Alright, Grizzly Bear. There's a level 21 bear roaming to the northwest of the town, so I targeted that and got to work watching the zeros fly until finally... With all 4 pieces of meat safely secured in my pants, I ported over to Varrock and made the rest of the journey back to Taverley on foot. Once back, I headed south into the dungeon, where I was immediately greeted with the bigger, blacker demons. It's fine, they're only like level 172. I could take them. The Cauldron of Thunder is all the way in the north, through some low-level skeletons. When I tried to open the gate though, the suits of armor came to life, but couldn't do anything because I was already being attacked. Clicking on the gate one more time allowed me to enter and dump the meat into the cauldron, after banishing away an ROTC demon. You would have thought those guys stayed in high school where they belonged, but no. They just grew up and decided to coach the football team in full uniform, forever forced to cosplay as real soldiers. After dipping the meat into the cauldron of blue dye 40 and evoking the wrath of a brainworm, I returned to the druid above his Herblore shop and handed over the meat. From there, it was back to the original druid in the north to complete the quest and unlock the ability for me to clean a bunch of leaves for the local vegans. In all seriousness, the quest rewards 4 quest points, access to the Herblore skill, and 250 Herblore XP, which is enough to get me to level 3 and unlock access to attack potions. 4 said attack potions, I'll need Guam Leaf and 1 Eye of Newt. I know the Eyes of Newt can be purchased for 3 GP each at the Herblore shop in Taverley, but for Guam Leaf, I only have 28 in my inventory. Cleaning those boosted me to level 4. And with my Guam Leaf successfully cleaned, I ran back to Taverley and purchased a bunch of materials, including an Eye of Newt pack for 300 GP, and a fuck ton of vials that I'll need to make potions with. For just 1 coin more, you can buy a water-filled vial pack, saving all the time of having to fill them up for yourself, so it just seemed like a no-brainer to me. Back in Falador, I grabbed the necessary supplies and got to work crafting my first attack potions. This is done by taking the clean leaf and using it on a vial of water. For attack potions specifically, I used the Guam leaf on the vial of water, and once those were combined, I then grabbed a few Eyes of Newt and combined those with the mixture, completing the basic attack potion for 25 XP per potion. 28 potions boosted me up to Herblore level 9, unlocking more potion types for me to make, such as anti-poison. It also allowed me to start cleaning other leaves like Marintil, which bumped me up to level 10. At this point, I only needed 2 more levels before I could start on strength potions, but I'm out of materials for now, so this will have to do. At least until I can loot some more Guam Leaf or Unicorn Horns. Until then, it's time to change focus to combat, specifically Slayer. Now, in preparation for this, I watched several 1 to 99 Slayer guides, mainly to find the locations of all the Slayer masters and pick one that best suited me. I am not exaggerating when I say this, but practically every single guide tells the players that they shouldn't be grinding Slayer until they're like level 70 or 80 for combat. That's ridiculous, in my opinion. I guess if your goal is to max the skill as fast as possible, sure. But if your primary focus when playing a video game is having fun, I recommend you use Slayer to work on your combat skills. It is my personal belief that there is no more enjoyable way to train your combat and collect rewards than by completing Slayer tasks. It keeps everything feeling new and refreshing. It gives you a sense of working towards a goal other than a level check, and if you are focused on levels, it allows you to work on multiple skills at the same time outside of just ranged, melee, or magic specifically. With all that taken into account, I have a few things to do before diving headfirst into the skill. For starters, my ranged skill is still level 1. I have a short bow, and no armor. That's a problem. Thanks to Wintertodt, my fletching is up to 45, meaning I can make up to willow longbows, so I crafted a few bows to get me up to there, and set off for step number 2. Oak bows require level 5 ranged to wield, and use steel arrows. I have a ton of arrow shafts from earlier in the playthrough, and thanks to Tempoross, I now have thousands of feathers. All that's missing is the steel. More importantly, the coal needed to make steel. Sure, there's a small mine next to Lumbridge and Draenor with some coal spots, but I think my time is better spent over in the Motherlode Mine. Located just north of Falador in the Dwarven Mine, this used to be my favorite way to train mining in RuneScape. Now, you do need to be level 30 to access the lower portion, but honestly you could just knock out a few hundred iron and then head here for all the coal you could ever dream of. Real quick though, while I was in the Dwarven Mine, I ran over to Nurmoth and purchased a rune pickaxe for 32k. It's a bit expensive for my current budget, but I'm a high enough mining level to use it, so I'm gonna. Did that mean I needed to stop what I was doing, backtrack all the way to Falador, grab the cash, and run back? You know what, just mind your business. Alright, Motherlode Mine. It's pretty simple and straightforward. After squeezing through the cave entrance, you just need to mine these little veins in the wall and collect pay dirt. Once your inventory is full, you take the pay dirt over to the little hopper on the conveyor belt and dump it in. Sometimes the wheels will break on the side, but you can search the crates for hammers to repair them with. Shout out Jin for doing the heavy lifting for me. The pay dirt then gets filtered down into a sack at the end, which can hold up to 108 storage space in it. You get a lump sum of XP depending on the types of material that get filtered out. In my case, over 400 for mostly coal and a few gold ore. These types of ore that you get from the Motherlode Mine depend entirely on your mining level. In my current level, I'm only eligible for coal, golden nuggets, and gold ore. But at 55, I'll unlock Mithril. 70 will unlock Adamant, and 85 unlocks Rune. There's an interactive graph on the RuneScape wiki that shows drop chance for each type of material broken down by level. So at level 41, I have an 85.9% chance of getting coal with each piece of pay dirt. I mentioned golden nuggets a second ago. Consider that as like the currency of the Motherlode mine. They can be exchanged with Stinky Pete from Toy Story 2 for a variety of rewards, including a prospector helmet, jacket, legs, and boots, all of which provide an XP boost up to a total of 2%. You can also purchase gem and coal bags, a soft clay pack, and a bag full of gems. There's also some upgrades you can use the gold nuggets on, such as access to the upper floor for 100 gold nuggets after reaching level 57 in mining. This process repeated for several hours, with me loading up on coal, gold, and even a few gems. You may be sitting there and going, why are you spending so much time mining when you only needed a few steel bars to make the arrows? And to that I'd say, because it's just not about the steel arrows. Steel armor is actually the first armor set in the game that's considered a step above the Hardcore Ironman starting armor. Because of that, and the fact that I already have steel unlocked, I figured it was worth spending an extra hour or so to mine out more material, if it meant that I could fully upgrade my armor for the first time this playthrough. So, after spending a few hours accumulating some coal, gold, and a handful of gems, I put in another 30 minutes or so of mining for some more iron before finally getting to work smelting it all into bars. Unfortunately for me, this, it took longer than I was expecting it to. Turns out, 130 odd steel bars isn't even enough to make a scimitar or arrow tips, let alone a plate body. This meant more mining, more smelting, and more grinding, setting me back another few hours. I mean, honestly, it sent me back to Motherlode Mine for more coal mining. Well, this was a bit embarrassing. I probably should have checked this before committing countless hours to the grind, but I don't unlock steel plate bodies until level 48. Fuck. We're at a little over 74 hours in, and it's gonna take a good dozen or so hours to knock out the 11 levels needed for the steel armor. I'm not kidding, I need an estimated 709 steel full helms, which are 2 bars apiece, so over 1,400 steel bars just to unlock the plate body. Instead, I'd rather spend my remaining time focusing on combat, in the hopes that I'll be able to get some more steel bars, or maybe even better armor as some drops. All that's left to do before getting started is to finish fletching some iron and steel arrows. Okay, one more thing. I went ahead and burned through all of the steel bars I'd made in the hopes of unlocking a steel kite shield to at least upgrade something. This ended up being the right move and landed me both a steel full helm and a steel square shield. It's no kite shield, but it's better than an iron one. It's not some massive upgrade, but +3 across the board for the helm and a 1 to 4 range for every damage type on the shield is pretty good for me. And with that, it's finally time to start on Slayer. There's a Slayer Master over in Canifis that requires a level 20 combat score to start with, so I chose them as my first master. While my attack and strength are 30, my ranged is still only level 1, and magic is only 25. So even though my combat level is 33, it's not a super accurate representation of where I'm at. Anyway, the Slayer Master is in the northeast. They give me a task to find and kill 36 ghosts. Not sure how or why, but the dialogue for them was as if I'd already completed tasks before, but I haven't. To my knowledge, this was my first encounter with a Slayer Master. I don't know, I just thought that was a bit weird. Anyway, onto the ghosts. They're weak to magic, specifically air spells. I don't have any magic armor though, so I was a bit nervous going in. The best place I could think to find ghosts was actually in a trapdoor sewer entrance in Varrock next to the castle. I went ahead and bought a Staff of Air to bring with me as well, partially so I could have infinite air runes, and partially because I'm lazy and this allows me to autocast. I love that my first enemy is ghosts, like the one enemy type that doesn't have a loot pool. Well, they do, but it's 2 items. It's a loot bag and a clue scroll. On the bright side, they're hostile towards me, so I can fight 3 at the same time, which sped up the process a bit. But in the process of slaying the 36 ghosts required to complete my first task, I leveled up my constitution and defense once each, Slayer up 4 levels to 13, and magic up 3 levels to 28. Not bad progress at all. I'll still need 4 more completed tasks before I start earning Slayer points though, so I ran back over to Canifis and grabbed a new task. Number 2, kill 48 wolves. These are level 64 pretty much anywhere on the map, except for one place. I never thought I'd say this, but thank God for the stronghold of security. Down here, the wolves are only level 14. Wolves have a 25% weakness to fire spells, meaning I can keep up with magic at the cost of no armor. These ones don't have much in terms of drops, but on the bright side, they do drop bones, so prayer XP, I guess? I don't know. The only real downside to going with weaker wolves is that they only award me 15 Slayer XP per kill, but I'm still low enough of a level that it doesn't make all that much difference to me. 46 kills later, and I was up to Magic 31, Defense 25, and Slayer 15. Just some slow, steady progress. Well, for my third task, the Slayer Master clearly had me confused with either Christy Gnome or Michael Vick. There are level 21 jackals in the desert to the south of Al-Kharid, so I made those my target. Much like wolves, they have a weakness to fire, albeit 10% compared to the 25 from regular wolves, but it's still better than nothing. They also drop bones, so if nothing else, I'll be able to keep chipping away at my prayer level. To reach them, though, I'll need a shanty pass, along with some desert clothes to prevent myself from overheating. I found the jackals over in the southeast, past a group of hostile camels and salamanders, at the cost of both my bucket and jug of water. This was by far the riskiest place to be, because not only was I having to constantly watch my surroundings, but I'm also taking periodic damage from the desert heat. The trade-off is an XP bump of 27 per kill. Needless to say, I burned through most of my food fairly quickly, but thankfully, there's a small town of Narda, just to the south, where I was able to shove a cake down my gullet to save my life, bank the bones I'd collected, and restock on food before heading back out to complete the task. Definitely one of the more stressful encounters of the playthrough, but still pretty simple as long as you pay somewhat close attention. Next up, Hill Giants. They can be found pretty much anywhere in RuneScape, but I know a free-to-play spot over in the Edgeville dungeon, so that was where I started. While they do have a 25% weakness to earth spells, I decided to swap back to melee for this task as an excuse to finally use my steel scimitar that I'd crafted a few hours ago. The giants are in the south of the dungeon, past some level 42 hobgoblins, but to reach them, you actually need to go past some skeletons and loop all the way around, instead of just making a quick right turn. Fun fact, there's another Slayer Master down here, but he requires a combat level of 40, and I'm not quite there yet. There's also some moss giants down here that I used to farm when I first started playing RuneScape back in the day, but haven't visited in a long time. Anyway, hill giants. These guys are all level 28, so they should be easy kills for me, but I ended up struggling with them a ton early on, mainly because my combat skills are all like 30, and I'm pretty under-geared if we're being real. They do drop giant bones that I plan to hold on to for some prayer grinding later on, as well as some more herbs to clean and use for potions that I completely forgot about until typing that out. Thankfully, I need to kill over 30 of these guys, so there's no way I was going to be able to do that in one go, so my plan was to kill as many as I could until I got down to a few pieces of food. From there, I'd simply run back out the way I came, head back to Edgeville, restock on food and supplies and grab my potions, and then head right back in to finish the task. The only real downside to these kind of Slayer tasks for me is that I'm still not earning points for completing them. Including the Hill Giants, I'll need to complete another task before I even start stockpiling points. On the bright side, Hill Giants are hostile, so I didn't have to constantly bounce around. Hell, most of the time, they just came right up to me. On my way back to the Hill Giants, I found a couple of unicorns out of the woods, and remembering that I needed some crushed unicorn horns for herblore, killed one to test it on back at the bank. Dope. These are needed for anti-poison potions, which are a step up from the base attack potions in terms of XP gained. So, after I finish up with the Hill Giants, my plan will be to kill a few more unicorns, use their horns to craft anti-poison potions to reach level 12, and then use the limp root that I'm looting off of the Hill Giants to craft some basic strength potions. That's the rough outline, anyway. We'll see if it actually ends up working out how I hoped it would. With the task completed, I poured it over to Varrock and made the rest of the sprint back to Canifis to grab my final point-free task. Don't worry, I didn't forget about the unicorns. I just wanted to grab another task before I slaughter a few fairy tale creatures. My next task was cave bugs. There are 2 types. One is level 6. The other? Level 96. Lovely. Thankfully, the level 6 bugs are over in the Lumbridge Swamp Caves, which I've never been to before, so I was excited to check it out. They have bonus defenses for melee and ranged combat, but have a 50% weakness to fire damage, so looks like it's back to magic. After fucking up some unicorns. For the mini unicorn horn grind, I went with ranged, since I hadn't touched the skill yet and figured these were a relatively easy enemy to grind out some early levels on. At least until I could swap to an oak bow and start landing a shot every once in a while, instead of constant zeros. In reality, this was probably incredibly stupid, since it took forever to kill a single unicorn, let alone the 5 levels of ranged needed for the next bow. Eventually, I just swapped to iron arrows, which helped a bit, but progress was still super slow, which was pretty annoying to deal with. That being said, after swapping to an oak longbow and steel arrows, game over, he said as he fired off like 10 straight zeros in a row. In total, the most I could bring myself to grind was 8 unicorn horns. It took longer to obtain those horns than it did for me to kill 32 hill giants in a separate location with runs to and from the bank included. With those 8 unicorn horns, I was able to make 8 anti-poison potions, allowing me to clean some more herbs, bringing me up to level 12 herb lord. All of that work for 2 strength potions that, let's be honest, I'm probably not even gonna fucking use. Case in point, the Lumbridge dungeons. Don't really have a need for strength potions when I'm using magic. So, the Lumbridge Swamp Dungeon. It's located right next to the chef-looking guy and requires a rope to enter. You know what, it's probably just better if I show you how this went. Yeah. Turns out, you need to complete the Making Friends with My Arm Master Quest from the Troll Quest series. Something I both don't know how to do, nor do I have the want to do. Which means, back to Canifis. Now, as it turns out, I'm not able to simply cancel a task. I actually need to spend 30 Slayer points to do that, or spend 50 to block it. There's just one problem. I have no fucking points. So, I guess that means I'm at the end to Slayer, like at least for this challenge. I mean, I managed to get it to level 20, at least, but I was really hoping to be able to grind it out for a bit longer to hopefully start stockpiling some points. Instead, I ended just how I began. 0. Now, instead of doing the bare minimum to figure out if there was another way to reset the task, I changed focus back to Thievery, determined to hit level 50 and unlock the Rogue's Den. I'm level 27 right now, which means I can steal from these seed stalls, which will be great for getting started on farming, if I ever decide to do that at some point. The big downside is simply the fact that I'm only getting 10 XP per seed. I managed to endure this suffering for a whole level before subsequently looking up other thievery methods. Turns out, the ideal way to level until 45 is by stealing from fruit stalls in Hasidius. I've never been there before, but a quick Google search tells me that I can travel to Land's End and then just run east. So I did just that. Behold, middle class. The fruit stalls are sitting around in the open of the town and are guarded by a few Rottweilers, but I ended up getting them stuck on the side of the stall and was able to farm out full inventories worth of fruit with ease. Each piece of fruit gives almost triple the XP that the seed stalls did, lending me 28 to 29 XP per successful steal. To my knowledge, there's not much you can do with the fruit collected from these stalls, aside from use some of them in a few pies that I have, and I cannot stress this enough, absolutely zero fucking interest in making. So instead of keeping everything and hoarding it in my bank, I decided to just dump it all on the floor and keep stealing. Well, it's not entirely true. I held onto the strange purple fruit since it restores run energy, and I feel like those will come in handy. Hi, post-editing TGP here. The fucking guys, I write these scripts live, like as I play. Like I have on my second monitor, I have the Word doc. I'm not gonna spoil it. You'll just they come. I promise they come back. Let's just keep rolling. To go from thieving level 28 to 38 took a little over an hour, at which point I teleported back to the mainlands and ran my happy ass over to Draenor to pickpocket some master farmers. These guys give 43 XP per successful pickpocket, along with more seeds at a higher quantity compared to the seed stall for the farming endeavors. The only downside with them is the fact that they can stun lock you for a few seconds every time you fail. Regardless, over the course of about 2 hours in a Lewis McClung documentary, I grinded out 7 more levels to reach 45. Truly a feat of all time. Here's all the seeds I collected during that process. From levels 45 to 50, it's recommended to do an activity called blackjacking. This is the art of luring a bandit into a house and slipping them the old hot Cosby and pickpocketing them twice while they're unconscious. It yields insane amounts of XP if you can pull it off correctly. It's also something I've never attempted before, making it an excellent recipe for success. Surely I won't find a way to fuck this up beyond belief, right? Well, I thought the same thing, until I saw that I needed to kill level 70 and 75 enemies to complete the quest needed to reach the area, at which point I noped out and turned my focus to something else. Something that I really haven't done all that much of this playthrough. Quests. So far, I've only managed to tackle 13 quests for a total of 17 quest points. So to start, I targeted several of the free-to-play quests, since I have a fond memory of those. There was something about completing Demon Slayer as a kid that just felt so rewarding. Or Goblin Diplomacy, having that moment when you walk into the village for the first time to see an all-out civil war going on. I'd argue some of the most enjoyable quests are the free-to-play ones, especially when it comes to enjoyment and not just trying to complete them as fast as possible. So to start, I began my questing journey over in the middle of Varrock, talking to a horny psychopath near the fountains. He's looking for Juliet, who clearly owed him money. Yeah, they put Romeo and Juliet in RuneScape. It's one of the original quests that released with the game back in 2001, which, at least to me, I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, Juliet is over in the house next to the bank on the second floor, so I peacefully protested through the front door and found her upstairs. For some reason, she's not at all confused or taken aback by the knight in shitty hardcore Ironman armor kicking in her front, bedroom, and balcony doors, and instead just hands me a letter to deliver back to Romeo. The letter basically tells Romeo that he's super cool, but it's just not gonna work, because her dad will do every Briton's favorite pastime if he sees him with her. But there is hope. I just need to speak to Father Lawrence. He's over in the chapel, and thankfully not doing priest things when I walk in. No, hold on, let him cook. He's the asshole who comes up with a plan to make Juliet appear dead, just like the young boys in the back room. To do that, I need to speak to the apothecary over in the southwest. He tells me to go collect some cadaver berries near the mine, just outside of town. After handing over the berries to the apothecary, he makes the potion on my behalf. All that's left to do now is deliver that potion to Juliet. A cutscene plays showing Juliet dying before the Monopoly man bursts through the door. Sure, he won't suspect the random guy holding a steel scimitar of any wrongdoing. Oh my god, I completely forgot about the ending. That's wild, man. Don't trust gingers. Next on the list, one of my personal favorite quests in the game, Demon Slayer. You can start the quest by talking to Eris the Fortune Teller near where you can find Romeo. It costs a grand total of 1 GP to start the quest, mainly because it requires the lady to read your palms like she's fucking Polly from Peaky Blinders. She tells me that those dark wizards that keep bringing down the property value in Varrock are trying to bring back a 150-year-old demon to come fuck up everyone's day, and that I'll need the sword named Silverlight if I'll have any hope of defeating him, just like Wally. Who's Wally? This guy. I'll need to mimic his actions and recite an incantation while stabbing the demon with the Silverlight sword. So, after taking a screenshot of the incantation, I set off to find Silverlight, currently in the possession of Sir Pryson, a descendant of Wally the hero. Sir Pryson tells me that the sword is so powerful that the king made him lock it up in a chest that requires 3 separate keys to open with. Pryson has one of the keys, but the other 2 are being held by one of the castle guards, with the final key held by Treyborn, a wizard who lives in the tower south of Draenor. I'll get to that later though. For the time being, I was focused on grabbing the key from Captain Roven, who happily hands it over after laughing his ass off upon hearing that Pryson dropped his down a drain. To get Pryson's key, you need a bucket of water. With that bucket, you can pour it down the drain in the northeast of the castle to flush the key into the sewer. From there, it's back around through the manhole and over to the rusty key next to the drain straight ahead. With 2 of the 3 keys needed, all that's left to do now is head on over to the Wizard Tower and talk to Trayborn. This old fart's pretty cool. I mean, he's got a fucking dragon's head mounted on his bedroom, so, you know. He asked for 25 bones to break an enchantment on his closet of valuable shit, and thankfully, I've been stockpiling a shit ton of bones from throughout the playthrough. With those 25 bones, I'm able to grab the final key needed to obtain Silverlight, so I ported back to Varrock and spoke with Bryson. I love the little animation you do when you get the sword, it's such a nice little touch. The last thing to do was head south and take on Delrith and his little dark wizard buddies. The demon is super easy to kill, and the hardest part is honestly just remembering the incantation, which you can now simply just screenshot, something a 25-year-old quest didn't have to worry about back then. Completing the quest earned me another 3 quest points, along with Silverlight the Sword, which, statistically, is better than the Steel Scimitar in everything except speed, strength boost, and 1 point in slash damage. Another quest that I remember loving as a kid was Goblin Diplomacy. This can be started by running over to the Goblin Village, just west of the Ice Mountain. So what is Goblin Diplomacy? Well, these little green guys are having a bit of a disagreement. The Crips and Bloods of Gielinor. If the Crips were green and the Bloods were still the Bloods, but equally as stupid. The plan is to bring them different sets of armor to choose a color that they can both agree on, starting with orange. In total, I'll need 3 sets of goblin armor, which can be looted off of the corpses of slain goblins. If that's too boring for you, the 3 sets of goblin mail can also be found in a crate behind the general hut, in a crate in the west building, and in a crate on top of the guard tower. With all 3 sets of armor, it was off to find some orange and blue dye. This part requires some running, so first up, it was over to Falador to talk to the head gardener, where I purchased 2 woad leaves needed for the orange dye. Just south of Falador, I picked up 2 onions before backtracking all the way over to where I picked up those Cadaver berries an hour or 2 ago for some red berries. With all my supplies stacked in the inventory, it was over to Draenor to find and speak with Aggie, who made me a yellow, red, and blue dye. If you remember from first grade, combining yellow and red makes orange, completing both of the dyes needed. With 1 orange and 1 blue dye, I added them to 2 of the 3 goblin males, keeping 1 its default color. Time to return to the goblin village so these dipshits can choose what color they best want to dye in. It's a literal goblin fashion show. Their end choice? The original brown armor that they started with. Classic. Completing this quest earned me another 5 quest points, along with 200 crafting XP and a gold bar. Currently, I'm a little over 84 hours in, so a little side goal for me was to complete all of the remaining free-to-play quests before the end of the playthrough. There are 22 total, and so far I've completed 10 of them. If I'm able to knock out the remaining 12 within the next 16 hours, it should open up the rest of the run to focus on the members' quests and some more general skilling. They're also pretty simple quests compared to the members' ones, so I'm hoping it won't be overwhelming to the point where I fuck up and get myself killed. A lot of these are very short as well, so chances are high that I can actually complete this goal with a few hours to spare. To complete these in the most straightforward fashion, I opted to begin at the top of the list and work my way down, starting with below Ice Mountain. You can start the quest by speaking to Willow near the entrance to Ice Mountain. She tells me how she found a set of doors covered by some rocks, and asks for my help assembling an Ocean's 11 team that are totally archaeologists and not at all grave robbers and thieves. Don't question it. First on the list of recruits, Checkle the Strongman. He's a wannabe bodybuilder hanging out over in the Barbarian Village, and will only join up if I can prove my strength by training with his buddy Atlas. On top of this being a quest requirement, training with Atlas plays out like a Rocky movie, where you go through an intense training montage while Push It to the Limit plays faintly in the background. Once the montage completes, I unlock the Flex emote, which I can then use on Checkle to convince him to join up. Next up, Burntoff, the explosives expert. Get it? Pretty fucking stupid. He's dicking around at the bar over in Falador. Good old booze bag Burntoft's drunk out of his mind, so all I had to do was buy him another round and beat him in a game of rock, paper, scissors. Last but not least, I need to find Marley, the group's thief, the Bilbo Baggins of the Timu Team of Destiny. He's hanging out in the Edgeville ruins with the rest of the Pores. He can't really remember Willow on account of starving to death and requests a steak sandwich specifically from the Blue Moon Inn in Varrock. The cook there tells me that Marley was caught stealing from the patrons, which is why he was kicked out and barred from the pub. Now, instead of making the sandwich for me, the cook walks me through how to make one for myself, and I already have the meat available, but I'll need the bread and a knife. Now, I already have a knife in the bank, so I just grabbed that, but for bread, it was back to Lumbridge to go through the process of picking wheat, grinding it into flour, and combining that flour with water to make bread dough, and then baking that dough to make bread. Basically a callback to Tutorial Island from like 90 hours ago. All for a steak sandwich for a stinky hobo. With the team assembled, I returned to the entrance of Ice Mountain to watch the show. You guys ready for the big dramatic twist? They weren't archaeologists at all. They were grave robbers. Dun dun dun. I know, no one saw that coming. Anyway, the crew plans to kill me to prevent their secret from getting out, but right before Willow does so, Burntoft's drunk ass triggers a trap, summoning an ancient guardian for me to take on while everyone else flees the cave. The fight was actually pretty tough for absolutely no fucking reason. Evidently, I didn't bring enough food. That, coupled with the fact that I went a solid minute without landing a single shot, resulted in me fleeing the cave as well, only returning once I'd loaded my inventory with fish. It was during this second engagement that I noticed something. Am I supposed to just mine the pillars on the side? Oh my god. I feel like such an idiot. With the Guardian killed, I looted Willow's bag that she left behind before turning around to see one of those guys they threw at dartboards in the Wolf of Wall Street. This subsequently completes the quest, awarding me with 1 quest point, 2,000 coins, and access to the ruins of Candazale, a dwarven city deep within the mountain. The city is, or rather what's left of it, is actually really cool. There's a mine in the northwest holding clay, tin, copper, and baronite, which I'll get to in a second. A fishing spot in the southwest where you can fish for guppies, cavefish, tetra, catfish, slimy eels, frogs, and cave eels, all depending on your fishing level and membership status. Those can be prepared and offered to the fish altar nearby for prayer XP. In the east, you can find the Golem Workshop, and directly to the north is the Candazale Vault, a 60-second minigame that you can purchase access to by using baronite. So here's how everything works. You mine those baronite rocks, similar to the Motherlode mines. Those give you baronite shards, with a chance to earn baronite deposits, gems, and other cool shit. You can take any deposits you find over to the forge area, where you can smash them on a special anvil, giving you more shards. Once you have 750 shards, you can purchase the vault door access, and run through a giant maze for a chance at 3 types of lockboxes that hold items ranging from iron and logs to runes and armor. The big kicker here is the fact that you have to exit the vault through the same door you entered. If you don't escape before the timer runs out, you lose everything you brought in with you. To add on to that fact, the maze is randomized every time, and the lockbox spawns are also randomized, both by amount and location. Meaning, you never know exactly what kind of chests are in the maze when you enter, or where they could be, just that there are at least a few chests sprinkled throughout the maze somewhere. Good luck. It's also worth noting that each vault run requires 750 shards every time you run the course. It's not a one-time purchase. Naturally, I just had to give it a shot, so I grabbed my rune pickaxe and got to work smacking the walls for shards and deposits. After gathering the required shards, I placed all of them into the Sacred Forge and opened the vault door for my first run. With 2 chests secured, I made it out with literal milliseconds to spare, earning me an elaborate and ornate chest. Time to see if it was worth. Honestly, not horrible. The steel plate skirt had a 1 in 328 chance of landing from the elaborate chest, after a 4 in 50 chance to roll the gear table drop. The 2 uncut emeralds were a 1 in 16 chance, so not amazing, but the steel plate skirt is an upgrade over the Hardcore Ironman plate legs, as long as you're cool with a bit of cross-dressing. With a successful run in the books, I opted to head back to the mines to give it one more shot. This turned out to be a decent plan, as it landed me a broken Imkando hammer? I don't fucking know. It's like a regular hammer, but cooler because you can hold it in your offhand. It's also not lost or destroyed when doing activities like Tempoross or Wintertodt. It requires 1,250 shards to repair though, meaning I'll need 2,000 shards for that and a second run. Time to get to work. Check it out, pretty fucking sweet, right? Okay, one final run through the vault. This time, I got too greedy, opting to try and grab a second ornate chest instead of just dipping out with one and an elaborate chest, resulting in me losing everything. A massive letdown, but at least I got a cool hammer to show for all the work I put in. Alright, detour aside, I think it's time to get back to questing. On to the Black Knight's Fortress. I vaguely remember this one, but it's a classic from 2001, so I'm excited for it nonetheless. To start, you need to speak to this guy in the White Knight's Castle, home to all the fedora-wearing neckbeards vibing on VR chat. They need someone to infiltrate the big brawlic Black Knight's Fortress to discover how they season their food, a concept foreign to the White Knights. To do this, I'll need an iron chain body and a bronze med helm to properly disguise myself. There's a chainmail shop in the south of Falador that I used to purchase the iron chain body, and the bronze helm can be scooped up from the side room in Draenor Manor. You can also craft them if you want, but I only had 2 iron bars and didn't feel like wasting them on some shitty chainmail. With both pieces of armor equipped, I pushed into the Black Knight's Fortress, determined to uncover their secret weapon. This is what I remember. Trying to navigate through this without a guide, it wasn't difficult, but it was definitely, like, annoying. I don't know. I got turned around a couple times, but after a few minutes of bobbing and weaving through staircases, ladders, and taking a beating from the Black Knights, I managed to find the correct room. As it turns out, the secret weapon isn't Laurie's and Goya, it's an invincibility potion, being crafted by the Wicked Witch of the West. The final ingredient needed is cabbage, specifically from Draenor Manor. Any other type would ruin the entire brew that she spent the last 5 years working on. Guess I just need to find some non-Draenor Manor cabbage, and I know just where to find some. Shout out the Falador Farms for their extensive cabbage supply. Back at the fortress, you need to take a different route this time, and go through the dining room where an important meeting is taking place. There's a ladder in there that'll take you up to the 2nd floor, where you can hug the wall until finding a secret passage with an opening directly above the cauldron. This allows you to drop the cabbage in from above. Speaking with the leader of the White Knights completes the quest, earning me 3 more quest points and 2,500 coins. For the 3rd quest of this sprint, it's over to Port Sarim to meet with Captain Tok and start the Corsair Curse. This quest was added about 10 years ago in 2017, and it's one of the few free-to-play quests that I haven't completed throughout my time in RuneScape. Captain Tok tells me his crew has been cursed. He's got a ship docked by Remington that can take us over to the Cove for free, so I agree to tag along. 4 of his crew have been afflicted with a curse, so once docked on Corsair Cove, I set off to find them and speak with each of the members individually. Arson and Colin are together in the building just west of the dock, so I hit them up first. Both of them tell me to speak with Ethoi. All he talks about is getting molested by Kanye West and the rest of the fish people, but doesn't know how or why the entire group was cursed, so I ran back to Arson and Colin for round 2. Arson thinks he caused the curse because he stole some loot from a few ogres and a few days later, they all got sick. Colin thinks it's his fault because he blew a kiss to a mermaid after spying on her with a telescope, like a fucking perv. Noki, the cook, great name, is actually the most believable. He found a possessed doll while trying to fish for dinner one night, and buried it in the sand by a tree. Nevertheless, I have 3 avenues to explore. Naturally, I started with Annabelle, which turned out to just be a clock. I think. Okay, time to figure out the mermaid kerfuffle. Colin said he used the telescope at Ethoy's hut, so I did the same. No mermaid, and no ogre either, despite what my character hallucinated. But it did mean that Arson's theory was the strongest. So, after exploring a bit and finding a hole in the ground, I jumped through, only to be greeted by several level 82 ogres. Thankfully, they're out of range, so I was able to speak to the chief, who talks kinda like you'd expect Amy Slayton to talk. Turns out, I forgot the relic that Arson stole, so I had to run all the way back to Talk, retrieve the relic, then run back through the cove and down to the hole to return it. All to find out that the ogres did not, in fact, curse the crew. This also wasn't even a relic, it was a toothpick. With all 3 paths leading to dead ends, I returned to the crew and dispelled each of their theories. At this point, I had no one left to talk to, so I made my way back to Captain Talk to report on my findings. The captain says everyone except Ethoy got sick after eating a meal, but Ethoy got sick shortly after, without touching the food, so I returned to his hut to question him some more. He tells me he didn't eat the food and that it must be accursed, so I moved on to Noki, the chef. This is where it gets interesting though, because Noki didn't actually cook that night. He was too traumatized from the demon doll clock. So who did cook for the crew that night? Questioning Ethoy a 3rd time starts to piss him off. He tells me I'm lying and that he'd never poisoned the crew, but he's still the top suspect. From there, I met with Arson, who told me that Ethoy was about to be outed from the crew since, well, they no longer need a navigator. But, if the cove were cursed, well, they'd have to leave again, with a navigator, for their journey, thus giving Ethoy a purpose. I presented the reasoning to Ethoy, essentially calling him out on his bullshit, and, he just fucking admits to it? Dude, lie. Just lie. You probably would have been okay. He refuses to leave his hut though, so I had to come up with a way to get him out. I do have the tinderbox from Noki, so I just started spamming that around his hut to no success, until... Oh my god, he escaped from Hogwarts. I brought these findings to Captain Talk, who tells me to kill Ethoy, so I ran back out to his hut for the final showdown. Normally, I'd be at a disadvantage, because he's magic and I went melee. But, he's not wearing any armor, so I kinda just chunked away at his health while healing through any damage he did to me. With the navigator officially slain, I returned to Talk to inform him of the good news. This completes the quest, earning me 2 quest points and access to the Corsair Cove Bank. Back on the mainland, I ran north of Falador to get started on Doric's quest. This one requires level 15 mining, but given that I'm currently sitting at 54, I think I'm okay. The main focus of the quest is acquiring raw materials for Doric so that he can fulfill an order to the nearby dwarves. Funny enough, it's their mine that I ended up using to obtain said materials. Doric needs 6 clay, 4 copper, and 2 iron. Now this has to be one of the quickest quests to complete, only taking a few minutes to grab a pickaxe, mine the material, and bring it back to Doric. After completing the quest, I'm awarded another quest point, 1300 mining XP, 180 coins, and the use of Doric's anvils. It's here where I ran into my first free-to-play quest holdup, Dragon Slayer. For those of you who don't know, Dragon Slayer is what I'd argue to be one of the most difficult but important free-to-play quests in the game. It's certainly one of, if not the longest quest to complete for free-to-play, requiring tons of items, skill levels, and well over a dozen steps to complete. Not to mention the need to fight a level 83 dragon. For me to run in with nothing but steel would be complete suicide. Given that my defense was already level 26, it made much more sense for me to grind out to 30, and then work on obtaining some adamant armor through another method. Adamant smithing requires level 70, which just isn't feasible within the time limit. But it can be purchased from various armor stores throughout the map. For the time being, I'm gonna hold off on questing and instead focus on getting my skills up a bit more. Okay, pause. Post-editing TGP here one more time. What happens next, or the info that is talked about for the next few minutes, is entirely due to just lack of game knowledge in general. So, for the seasoned players, they're going to hear this and immediately go like, you absolute dipshit. And you know what? I totally understand it and I totally get it. My bad. This entire next portion of the grind is entirely pointless to the rest of the playthrough. It does not matter at all. I think, personally, I think it's kind of funny and kind of cool, so I kept it in. But you'll see. We'll just get to it. But just know, looking back, dumbass. Okay, I know. All right, well, let's go. The big selling point for Dragon Slayer is 37 prayer. This is mainly because you unlock the Protect from Magic prayer at level 37, which is practically a must-have for fighting the boss dragon. So, over the course of the playthrough, I've been stacking bones intermittently, waiting to spam them all into an altar to power level my way to victory. Normally, I'd use the Chaos Altar in the Wilderness, but given that I am an Ironman with a whopping 29 health, that's another easy path to ending the run. Instead, I can add my own altar to my house at construction level 45, allowing me to sacrifice bones there for the same XP boost, but without risking death by PK. What I'm trying to say is, it's time to put the hard hat back on and get super into carpentry for a few hours. But to do that, I'll need more oak planks. Hundreds of oak planks. Which means, it's back to woodcutting. Is what I would say if I wasn't finally told about what the Marks of Grace are used for. Sorry, I know this has been chaotic, but bear with me for a second. Turns out, all those Marks of Grace I spent 50 levels of agility collecting, those can be used to purchase an outfit at the Rogue's Den, which not only comes with a massive weight reduction, increasing your sprinting distance, but each piece also adds a 3% run energy restoration effect, with a total boost of 30%, paired with a 25 kilogram weight reduction when using all pieces. The only downside? It costs a total of 260 Marks of Grace to complete the set, over double what I am currently holding. But even if I just grab 3 pieces and the cape, boots, and gloves, that's an additional 9% energy regen rate and 11 kg reduction in overall weight, which I think is pretty worth it when hauling around hundreds of logs. This is all just a roundabout way of me saying it was back to thievery. But instead of the blackjacking method that everyone loves to grind, I found myself back in Draenor, following the Master Farmer around yet again. To go from levels 45 to 50, it would take over 900 successful pulls, amounting to... shit, I don't even know how many hours. That being said, I gave up on this relatively quickly, and instead opted to return to the fruit stands to knock out the final 4.5 levels. Just something about getting stun-locked every 10 to 12 seconds. It takes the soul out of me, and there's only so much of that I can put up with. In total, it would take around 2 to 3 hours of grinding to reach level 50. I don't really know. I did a horrible job at tracking at this point, but I do know that I finally completed at least one goal that I targeted in this video, and that was to unlock the Rogue's Den. To reach this location, you just need to run over to Burthorpe and take this trapdoor to the town bar. Once inside, I spoke to Grace and purchased the graceful cape, gloves, and boots, providing me with a 9% boosted restoration rate and reducing my weight by 11 kilograms. From there, I found a guy named Martin and purchased all of his lockpicks because I've played Skyrim before. I know how this ends. So, what is Rogue's Den? Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me for this. Essentially, the den is a giant maze that you have to traverse, with the goal of reaching the center. There's tons of traps and obstacles to navigate, but there's a few twists to go with it. For starters, you can't bring anything in with you. No food, no stamina restores, no armor, nothing like that. The only item you're allowed to bring in is a jewel that can teleport you out of the maze at any time. Your prayer is also set to 0. Instead of taking damage from a trap or when failing an agility check, your skills are reduced, making it more difficult to complete the maze. Also, most traps just end your run instantly. Your sole focus, your sole goal for each run is to reach the safes in the center of the room. There are 4 wall safes that you can crack if you do reach it there. That's the real goal. The best reward here, or what people grind this for the most, is the Rogue's Armor set, containing a mask, top, trousers, gloves, and boots. Each piece of armor provides a 15% chance of pickpocketing an NPC twice, with each piece of armor stacking. If you do equip the entire set, you are guaranteed to get double drops when pickpocketing. I know the math doesn't add up, but that's just what you get for the full set. It also just looks dope as shit. though personally, I like the graceful outfit just a bit more. I just think it looks cooler. At level 50 Thieving, I have a 39% chance to successfully pull a rogue's equipment crate from a safe. It's worth noting that the wiki has an entire walkthrough to complete the maze, including all the puzzles and traps associated with it, as well as RuneLite having its own plugin that just shows you exactly where to go and what to do. But before I turn any of that on, or read the wiki, I told myself I'd complete at least one run authentically. And to be honest, almost all of it came through trial and error. I don't think the floor traps changed locations, at least in the beginning, so I just tried to remember the path I took each run and where I clicked, and just pushed a little further with every attempt. I did learn really quickly, the black specks on the floor tend to be floor traps, but the wall traps were an entirely different beast that I never anticipated having to deal with. In total, it took about 40 minutes for me to complete my first run. Not great, but I did it. And, on top of that, I managed to secure a crate on my first attempt, landing me the rogue mask. No time to hit the monkey bars. After taking over half an hour to complete a single maze run, I instantly turned on the Rogue's Den RuneLite plugin because this was hell. Naturally, I completed the course in about 5 minutes, only to trigger a trap while attempting to crack one of the safes. You know what? That's karma. I'll take it. We're even now for using the plugin. With that, I spent the next hour or two completing run after run after run, with a success rate of about every other run landing me a rogue equipment crate. On the bright side, even with the failed runs, I'm still earning close to 500 XP per maze crawl, so failure isn't the end of the world. It's annoying, sure, but not an end-all be-all. Hell yeah. This was... it's gonna sound a bit sad and embarrassing compared to, like, what the pro RuneScape players are pulling off, but this was the first completed outfit set of not just this playthrough, but really my entire time playing RuneScape. We're talking 20-ish years, and sure, I've bought full sets of, like, melee armor and all that, and I've gotten some, like, one-off drops from some PVM stuff with friends, but I've never completed a full outfit outside of combat gear before, so this was a big accomplishment for me personally, and one that I'm actually pretty proud of seeing through. With the rogue outfit completed, I swapped out the boots and gloves for the graceful armor set and returned to Varrock to get started on chopping up some oak logs. I have no idea exactly how many I need to reach construction level 45, but I know it's a lot, so I decided to just sit back and enjoy the grind for another hour until I reached 4 days played, at which point I could use most of the rest of my cash to convert the logs to planks, and then head back home to continue building up my super cool, awesome, no girls allowed fort. Alright. We're on the home stretch. 4 hours to go. Time to squeeze in as much shit as possible. During this short stint, I managed to scrape together 434 oak logs, so I started grabbing inventories full of them and making my way back and forth from the sawmill, converting them into planks, and burning through what little funds I had left. I stopped sawing planks when I had about 10k left because I knew each room cost between like 5 and 20k, and I figured 10k would be a good starting point, even if it meant leaving a few hundred logs unaccounted for. Oh, goddammit. Well, I already made all the planks. I'm gonna use them. All of those oak planks managed to bump me up from construction level 29 all the way up to 36. When I look back at the oak logs still waiting to be converted into planks, it only solidified my belief that I'd grabbed enough. I just ran out of money. And with my lack of money, I found myself back in familiar territory. Like going back to an abusive ex. This time, though, I'm going in much more prepared. For starters, I can make rejuvenating potions now, and heal the pyromancers with them when they get knocked out. I've got one of those Bruma torches to use, along with warm gloves and the pyromancer garb. For the remaining gear, I'm rocking clue hunter shit, maxing out my warmth. And finally, I'm holding that hammer I found and repaired in the ruins of Candazale, which allows me to repair the brazier for over 100 construction XP, and some more points. The plan here is to farm out as many rewards as possible as quickly as possible, recovering some of the GP I'd burned through, and giving me some better rewards for my upgraded skills, now that I've made some progress in most of them. Instead of spending my cash on a construction grind that'll take the rest of my time with, I'm opting to, instead, put that money to use, purchasing adamant armor. With that adamant armor, I plan to return to the hill giants and farm them for their bones. Then, with what little time I have remaining, I'll start doing the riskiest shit of my life and making runs to the Chaos Runes out in the wilderness in an attempt to level my prayer as much as possible. That way, if I do get PK'd in the process, at least it'll happen at the end. Anyway, I'll need about 40k for a full adamant armor, so that was the focus. After about 30 minutes of Wintertodt grinding, I'd amassed a total of 13 rewards. Here was the haul. Not a single gold piece. Well, that was a waste, but all hope wasn't lost just yet. I still had those steel items I'd crafted a while back, so I noted them up along with the iron ones, and started bouncing around, selling them wherever I could. To maximize profits, I sold the gear in sets of 5 across general stores in Varrock, Lumbridge, Remington, and Falador. This was definitely the best strategy for quick cash, and ended up netting me close to 30k, and combined with the 10k I already had in my bank, it totaled out to just under 42,000. More than enough to purchase what I needed. With the funds secured, I ran over to the Barbarian Village and bought an adamant helmet off of Pexa. From there, it was back to Varrock to find the Champions Guild. There's a shop on the 2nd floor that sells an adamant plate body for 20k. It is worth noting that you need at least 32 quest points to enter the Champions Guild, so thank God I knocked out a few of those quests earlier on, otherwise this just wouldn't have been possible. With the plate body secured, I ran back through Lumbridge to Al Kharid, where I met with Louis to purchase the adamant plate legs for a little over 6k. With my armor set officially ready for use, all I needed to do was knock out the final 3 levels in defense required for me to actually put the damn gear on. Well, that, and another 1000 GP on a mithril scimitar. Why not adamant? Well, because those can only be purchased in 2 locations, neither of which I currently have access to. Regardless, it's time to log a few hours with the Hill Giants to collect as many bones as possible before suiciding myself in the woods and waiting for Logan Paul to find me. Talk about a massive upgrade. Alright, back to the grind. So, while I was doing this, I did I learned about the Bone Shard grind, and that seemed like a way better option than what I'm doing now, but it's a bit late for that, sadly, so maybe another time. Alright, I'm at 4 days and 3 hours. 99 hours played. So, with the final hour, I ran up to Edgeville, swapped to the lowest populated world I could find, threw on a bunch of bones and some food in my inventory, and made my way into the wilderness for the first time on this account. Now normally, you'd use an amulet to teleport all the way out there, and then spam the bones and run back, but I don't have an amulet. I do have a bunch of energy restoring fruit though, so that's the plan. Thankfully, I'm also pretty low level, so even with the 38 level range, that's still a cap of like mid-70s. And if someone does run up on me, I'm just kind of hoping I'll be able to sprint back to like under the threshold before they can execute me. But I do realize that's usually everyone's strategy, and if that worked, this wouldn't be a PK hotspot. For the journey there, I tried to walk most of it to keep my stamina near 100%, just in case someone ran up on me. Not that it probably mattered all that much, but still better safe than sorry. After arriving at the altar and finding it empty, I got to work sacrificing my bones on it. The best part about this altar is that, aside from the insane XP boost, there's a 50% chance to not consume the bone, meaning you can effectively get double the XP out of each inventory. I was almost done with my first load when the first PKer arrived, but he was a bit too high level to kill me. Even with that though, I kept my guard up. Most PKers have multiple accounts to match different skill levels, and right on cue. Now, I do have a bit of experience in dealing with PKers. At least, I know their general methods. They stun and curse with magic, and then swap to crossbows to melt you down. And that's exactly what happened here. But thankfully, I had enough food to heal through the damage and outlast the stun. By this point, the PKer had swapped to poison in an attempt to bleed me out, but thankfully, and I have no fucking clue how, I managed to escape with 6 HP. I missed his proc by mere tiles. I'm not even kidding, you can see his ability animation queue up as I crossed the threshold for safety, but I didn't stop there. I had no food and was 6 HP from a run ender, so my fat ass sprinted back without stopping. I didn't look back until I was diving over the trench back into the safe zone. After cleaning up the pool of diarrhea around my desk, I determined that was enough wilderness time for me, and teleported back to Lumbridge. I'd managed to get my prayer up to level 20, which isn't terrible, but still way below what I was hoping for. Hans tells me that I have about 40 minutes remaining, so in an effort to run out the clock, I skipped up to the top floor, loaded my inventory with fish, and spent the rest of my time cooking up all my raw meat. We made it. Barely, but we made it. Here's my current skills and general character overview. What a journey. I talked about it at length throughout the video, but this was an entirely new way for me to play the game. This playthrough consisted of so many first times that it's almost embarrassing to showcase. From minigames to questing to armor sets, and I couldn't be happier about it. The progress was a bit slow, but at the end of the day, this was some of the most fun I've ever had in RuneScape. It's a stark contrast from just buying a bond, selling it, and then purchasing everything I need to power level from the Grand Exchange. Or AFKing sand crabs for 50 hours while I pretend I'm enjoying myself. I'd love to keep this going, so please drop your feedback, criticisms, tips, and ideas for me because, as you can tell from the video, this was all vibes. And as I continue pushing further into uncharted waters, I'd like to have some sort of plan as to how I can progress without soft-locking myself into spending endless hours smithing to 70s and 80s just to craft a level 40 sword that I'm going to use for like 2 hours. As I mentioned in the beginning, I stream over on Twitch on Mondays and Fridays, so if that's interesting to you and you want to see videos like this get made in real time, that's where you can find me. If you think Twitch is lame and gay, every VOD is trimmed down, edited, and released over on the second channel, where I upload 3 days a week. Links to both of those are in the description. With that, I'm gonna get out of here. Azeroth's calling my name. Never been there before, but I hear it's full of neckbeards. Gonna have to check that out. Until next time, I appreciate you all. Go call a loved one. Hey, let me pause for a second, real quick. I'm serious. If you're in the age demographic YouTube tells me you generally are, we're kind of starting to reach that point in life where family members are starting to get sick and dying. To get parasocial for a second, my wife and I have had 5 separate family members diagnosed with stage 4 cancers ranging from pancreatic to ovarian to brain. And I don't say this to host a pity party in the comments. Don't. I'm saying this because you should go call your family members and friends. Because one day you're not going to be able to and you'll wish you did. Cheers.